Ri stares at his monitor, convinced that everyone secretly believes the game's mother characters look cuter than the actual heroines. Maniana greets Reisi warmly, telling him her daughter has spoken about him often, welcoming him with a graceful, polite smile. During a sparring match, Maniana clashes blades with Ri, laughing as she praises his surprising and impressive swordsmanship skill. Later, Ri accidentally walks in on Maniana showering, and she playfully teases him for being such a naughty boy. On his screen, a mother character weeps and apologizes for being a bad mom before her tragic ending plays out. Furious and heartbroken over her death, Ri pounds his desk while his phone buzzes with a message from the developers. Ria excitedly wonders if the developers finally created a route where the mothers survive but reads only disappointing news. It turns out to be nothing more than another ordinary new event designed solely for the heroines once again. Frustrated beyond words, Ri snaps at the developers, revealed as a devoted fan obsessed entirely with older mother heroines. The game, called Malmagia Fantasia, is an adult academy story praised for its excellent, well-crafted RPG elements. What truly makes the game stand out are its heroines, each one blessed with a distinct personality of her own. However, Ri insists the real highlight is its awesome cast of charming mothers, perfectly suited to his taste as a fan. Sadly, these mothers remain only sub-heroines forever, since none of them are given any independent story routes of their own. Worse still, most of these beloved mothers suffer horrific endings, tortured, poisoned, mauled by dogs, or killed protecting others. Unlike the mothers' lackluster deaths, Reisi risks his own life protecting the heroines, vowing never to let anyone harm his partners. Countless players like Ri keep demanding a route where the protagonist falls for the mothers, yet every request gets ignored. Scrolling through fan comments praising the youthful heroines, Ri grumbles that those school uniforms belong on the mothers instead. Watching everyone abandon the mothers, Ri declares that if he were the protagonist, he would save them all no matter the cost. After finally finishing the game, Ri sighs and heads down the stairs, resigned to another ordinary day at work. Suddenly, he loses his footing and tumbles violently down the staircase, crying out sharply as everything fades into darkness, waking inside an unfamiliar Western mansion. Regi spots a strange portrait and realizes with horror where he might be. A worried woman rushes in, asking if he is all right, addressing him as Demonio, the villainous aristocrat, leaving him speechless. Raya recognizes the woman as Rosa, realizing with shock that she truly exists inside this world called Mama Fan. He excitedly cheers, amazed that he somehow wandered into the very game world he had played countless times before. Then he pauses, horrified to remember that Rosa had just addressed him directly by the name Demonio himself. Checking his reflection, Ridi confirms his fear, realizing he now wears the face of the villain he despised most. Demonio tried all. His new identity possessed excellent magic talent but was known as an arrogant and callous nobleman. Because the commoner protagonist stood as a constant thorn in his side, Demonio always picked fights he could never win. In every single route, regardless of choices, Demonio eventually met the same grisly, inevitable death without exception. Afterward, he would lose control entirely, consumed completely by his own overwhelming and destructive magical power. Panicking, Risi wonders what he should do now that he has truly arrived inside the world of Mamafan. Rosa suddenly appears, gently asking if Demonio is feeling unwell, since his face looks unusually pale and troubled. Regi is instantly soothed by her presence, quietly grateful for how calm and comforting her voice actually is. The narration explains that Rosa Tridal, Demonio's stepmother, rarely appears within the main storyline, but remains popular among certain fans. Rosa apologizes for entering without knocking, worried that she may have overstepped by walking in so suddenly. She insists it was actually her own fault, gently touching her cheek where an old faint welt still remains. Confused thoughts flood Reni's mind, memories that clearly belong to Demonio surfacing from before his sudden reincarnation began. In one memory, young Demonio screamed cruelly at Rosa, calling her nothing but a gold digger chasing his father's wealth. The narration reveals Demonio lost his real mother young, and channeled that grief into resenting Rosa. Despite his cruelty, Rosa continued showing genuine motherly love toward Demonio, treating him kindly no matter how he behaved. During his final battle, when Demonio finally lost control completely, Rosa still risked everything to protect him. Ignoring her plea, Demonio struck her down anyway, and that same tragic ending repeated itself across every single route. Horrified by these violent memories, Ri apologizes tearfully to Rosa, calling Demonio's past actions absolutely unforgivable and shameful. Embarrassed by his own outburst, Redi quickly claims he was going through an ordinary rebellious teenage phase before. When Rei accidentally calls her mom, Rosa's happy embrace catches him completely off guard, leaving him flustered by her surprisingly ample chest. Rosa asks him warmly to keep calling her mom often, delighted that he finally accepted her as family. Rei agrees they should build their bond slowly as a family, and Rosa happily says there is no need to rush. After Rosa leaves the room, Rei quietly admits to himself that she truly seemed like a wonderfully kind and adorable mother. He suddenly remembers with dread that it was Demonio himself who ultimately ended up killing Rosa within Mama Fan's story. Determined, Rei wonders if trying hard enough now could actually prevent Rosa from ever meeting that same tragic fate. His ambition grows further, imagining he might save every neglected mother whose story never gave her a real happy ending. The narration explains that certain sub-heroines burdened by unmerciful destiny had always fallen outside the protagonist's attention and care. Rei realizes that saving these mothers requires real power capable of defeating dangerous foes and overcoming every future obstacle. He begins training under a waterfall, pushing to gain strength worthy of changing fate. Demonio's natural talent was genuine, and his noble status granted him wealth and considerable influence. If he trains enough, his outcome could truly change. Rei declares he will let the story's usual hero protagonist keep saving the main heroines. Meanwhile, he vows that he alone will step forward to save every overlooked and forgotten mother throughout this world. A massive wild bear roars fiercely, towering over Tridol's peacekeeping unit as knights hesitate before its overwhelming size. Demonio steps forward calmly, ordering everyone to stand back before unleashing his intermediate spell called Black Dance instantly. The knights marvel as their young master defeats the beast with a single devastating strike of raw power. 3 months have now passed since Reine's reincarnation, and he silently hopes finishing quickly means Rosa will praise him. Servants whisper that Lord Demonio has changed lately, no longer treating them as mere disposable cattle anymore. They notice he trains hard constantly, even helping subdue dangerous beasts personally, which feels strangely unlike his former self. Inside the mansion, Rosa proudly reflects on how her stepson has truly become a respectable and responsible young man. As acting head while his father Glenn stays away, Demonio finalizes a deal, instructing Rosa to secure the documents safely. After Rosa excuses herself politely, a greedy visiting noble sneers, insisting her fortune-seeking intentions clearly cannot be trusted. He suggests Rosa might vanish with the family fortune, questioning whether handing her the contract was truly a wise decision. The corrupt men crudely mock her further, implying she seduced Glenn using nothing but her physical charm and body. The narration reveals Rosa comes from a fallen, impoverished, noble family, now scorned constantly as a shameless gold digger. Rei recalls how Demonio once cruelly insulted her the same way, accusing her viciously of only wanting his father's money. Rei angrily insists Rosa is nothing like that, calling his mother stunning, dignified, charming, and genuinely full of love. The other men, and even Rosa's servants, are stunned that Demonio dared to openly call her mom, furious that they disrespected his mother directly in front of him. Demonio warns the men their lives are forfeit. Dark magic coils around the terrified nobles, crushing them mercilessly as Demonio orders them to leave his sight immediately. Servants flee in panic outside, confused why Lord Demonio would defend the stepmother he supposedly always despised deeply. Rosa scolds him, reminding Demonio that as future head of house, he shouldn't let emotions control him. Demonio apologizes, admitting he got angry seeing those men disrespect her. Rosa pulls him into a warm embrace, teasingly calling him such a bad boy for causing such trouble. Blushing furiously, Rei admits privately that he now gets along wonderfully well with his kind, affectionate stepmother, Rosa. Surrounded by the mothers he has saved, Rei vows to gain more power, determined to rescue every neglected mother, even as Demonio's original fate still drags him toward ruin. Determined, Demonio vows to do everything within his power to save that particular chained mother heroine, whatever it costs. Demonio sprinted into the labyrinth, following a memorized path designed to bypass every danger he passed past ominous figures, aware some activated snares if disturbed. Care maintained him on course. By leaning ahead only through secure routes, he avoided beasts and arrived at the dungeon's lower depths. Numerous playthroughs of the game had engraved every path within his thoughts. Frustration becoming precision, waiting before the last door, he grinned. His perfect attempt was nearly finished. Enormous chains gripped a weapon suspended midair. Demonio neared, raised to its foreboding presence. Known as Despena, the blade gripped terrifying strength capable of amplifying shadowy magic past limits. Though once useless within the title, he now saw its potential with his altered circumstances. With a rapid tug, he seized the weapon. Its burden sensed natural in his hold. A hideous protector emerged, Triumph over this beast remained between him and the final prize. Demonio strengthened his hold. Although the beast was intense, he had memorized all its moves. Abrupt blows slammed into him. The sheer pace and power threw rubble soaring everywhere. Barely activating his dark barrier in moment, he shielded himself from being immediately ruined. Realizing title knowledge solitary wasn't enough, he pledged to fulfill his promise no issue what. Regardless of being overmatched, he charged forward, resolved to defend those he cherished in this world. Demonio fought to score a blow. The protector held onto the ceiling well aside from reach. Dark incantations erupted outside. His affinity for shadowy mana arts formed him risky regardless of the disadvantage. With mastery over mana arts manipulation, he selected to weaponize the villain's talents for life. Patiently, he observed the Guardian's flurry end, blade prepared as the beast allowed its guard down. A toxic mist burst. Demonio steadied himself, identifying this vulnerable gap as his single chance to blow. Demonio lifted his weapon and released all his strength into one centered incantation. A lance of gloom pierced through the atmosphere, aimed straight at the Guardian's gaping maw. The spell hit real, shattering the frail point concealed beyond rows of sharp teeth. As the smoke cleared, he considered on Despena's strength and how perfectly it enhanced his mana arts. With the labyrinth cleared, he grinned triumphantly, one step nearer to rescuing the mama he adored. A lock lady emerged, amused by the youth who had unknowingly become her fresh mentor. Demonio froze, astonished by her abrupt appearance and uncertain of what strength she gripped. After surviving the dungeon, Demonio carried rear the cursed blade Deathpenna, without one lone wound feeling filthy. He chose to shower, startled a medieval-themed world yet had modern conveniences. Upon opening the entry, he unintentionally strolled in on a lady changing clothes, drawing her off guard. His features shifted red immediately. Seized in the instant, he thanked destiny for the unforeseen sight later that evening. Silence spread through the room as the two awkwardly avoided every other's stare. Demonio bent strongly, his tone trembling with apology over the uneasy misunderstanding from earlier, rather of fury. She answered softly, her modesty only leaving her charm more noticeable to him. While she rejected herself as aged and plain, her gaze betrayed a clue of vulnerability. Privately, Demonio valued her clever candor, fascinated by every part of her heartfelt awkwardness. Without any hesitation, he praised her beauty. Upon hearing that, she reddened, pleased by his genuine fondness. While they rested across the table, her stare moved toward the foreboding blade on display. Astonished by his accomplishment, she commended him for conquering similar a dangerous labyrinth solitary. She remembered the dungeon's renown, piecing jointly recollections of hearing about its shadowy secrets. The hexed armament Deathpenna was known for its overwhelming strength and ties to shadowy mana arts. With genuine worry, she warned him to remain cautious, her remarks perfectly matching the title's scenario. She cautioned him about the sword's will, stated to ruin any mentor it despised. He brushed it off with a laugh until an odd young woman abruptly emerged from the armament. Rather of menace, the young woman started eating cookies, happily ignoring the circumstance entirely. Demonio realized she wasn't part of the source title. Her presence seized him off. Guard holding Deathpenna, he considered on the lesson title knowledge solitary wouldn't constantly guarantee life here. Demonio questioned what to name her, and the young woman confessed she didn't have an identity. To avoid saying demise, he chose on Penna, a lighter nickname that she swiftly received. With a grin, she cautioned him fail to amuse her, and he'd be hexed on the spot. She joked him for his mama complex, plainly conscious of his preferences and entertained by them. Without shame, Demonio announced his devotion, boldly insisting his affection for moms was his real power. Demonio ready to move early, aware the school phase would shortly begin at age 16. One female lead confronted a harsh destiny. Resolved, he pledged to rescue her prior to it started. Maniana Velheaven, recognized as the Witch of Rumble, remained prepared with lightning dancing around her weapon. Formerly an S-rank adventurer, she currently acted as one of the kingdom's strongest warrior pillars. After her husband's demise, she silently lifted her daughter Monica, rarely appearing beyond the title's prologue. Though unrelated to the primary plot, she seemed in swimsuit incidents, drawing players' notice effortlessly. Her appeal and beauty won over fans despite limited display moment, leaving her secretly beloved by numerous. All of abrupt, Maniana vanished during the mid-game, leaving no trace beyond in the story's incidents. Her unforeseen reappearance happened in Tridal's northern ruins. Under mysterious and risky circumstances, within, a team of armed bandits said crudely, oblivious their target was far past their reach. Overhead, Monica silently watched them, her silence masking the fury growing from their vulgar comments. She relayed the arrangement swiftly to her companion beneath, revealing a concealed passage beneath the ruins. Identifying the pattern, he confirmed Maniana's capture unfolded exactly as it had in the game originally. After discovering only he could see Penna, he selected to share all things to earn her aid. With Maniana's grim destiny looming, Penna urged him to move swiftly if he hoped to rescue her. In the initial timeline, Maniana reappeared delayed, warped past realization, loyal to the enemy's cause. Branded and broken, she came back as an foe, forcing the hero to feature her and fight. After the fight, Maniana regained her awareness and offered her life to defend Monika's tomorrow. A shattered gamer screamed at the display, stunned by the unfairness of her tragic outcome. Tormented by her destiny, he questioned the title's morality and sensed both fury and remorse. Regardless of all his pleas for a glad path, the creators ignored his frantic feedback. Currently reincarnated, Demonio ready to rewrite her tale before the calamity ever started. To hide his name, Demonio used a mask and pledged to rescue Maniana without payment. He surveyed the bandits' stance, verifying Penna's intel, and centered only on Maniana's happiness. Abrupt spell paralyzed the sentinels. His shadowy magic froze them in spot immediately. Without any hesitation, Demonio leapt forward and struck with overwhelming speed, disarming the enemy in seconds. Pina observed in awe, struck by his arcane command and power despite his youthful age. Demonio ready to infiltrate the underground base, dismissing the sentinels as little but frail underlings within. A sadistic captor expected, delighting in Maniana's bound condition within a row of jail cells. Thou chained and wounded, she stared reared defiantly, refusing to surrender regardless of her injuries and torn garments. Within the concealed underground facility, Demonio sprinted ahead, scanning for any signs of disruption. The circumstance confused him. Maniana, a renowned fighter, shouldn't have fallen so readily to bandits. Still, it wasn't mere bandits. Her captors were top members of the enemy's upper order. Schemes were meticulously designed. Only somebody of her power could serve their warped narrative properly. From afar, the initial author observed gleefully, orchestrating harshness under the guise of storytelling power. Demonio voiced his disgust, identifying the writer's obsession and surprise over coherence or substance. Somewhere else, Maniana rested shackled, her mana arts locked, puzzled, and powerless before the enemy's sneering taunts. A hexed collar rendered her defenseless, stripping both arcane skill and bodily reinforcement without exit. He ridiculed her helplessness, reducing her to small more than a bodily object for amusement. Effects of the disorienting potion accepted hold, leaving behind her form reacting while her thoughts resisted intensely. Greedy people shut in, assured their authority allowed harshness without consequence within the hidden facility. Dread surfaced as Maniana understood escape was impossible. Her strength locked while peril crept nearer. Memories came back of her resolve to become powerful, protecting household through training and unwavering work. Regardless of discrimination and contempt, perseverance shaped her into a capable royal warrior through hardship. Steel encountered power as she formally overcame immense threats, proving skill could defy brutal intent. Maniana endured numerous trials for her daughter's sake, burying her agony beyond quiet strength every day. Regardless of all she'd overcome, her current predicament departed her powerless prior to those who sought to break her. Tears welled up as shame and helplessness overcame her. Mind of her girl pierced her spirit. Abruptly, a sharp cry rang out. The assailant recoiled in agony, palm hit with decisive power. A masked person emerged, weapon in palm. Demonio stood between her and peril, stare unwavering. Demonio swiftly hit down the first attacker, disabling him precisely. An immense aura. One captor fled down the corridor, clutching a suspicious object firmly as Demonio offered chase. Maniana, left beyond and puzzled, fought to process the abrupt turn of incidents. A sharp projectile encountered its sign. Demonio carried the runner to the floor effortlessly. Trapped and trembling, the male pleaded, blaming orders as Demonio approached without speaking. The captor disclosed a hex tool, stating it could suppress Maniana's power entirely. On his knees, he pleaded for mercy, giving the artifact as a frantic bargaining chip. Demonio's partner ridiculed the pitiful show while his thoughts momentarily hesitated at a flustering suggestion. Regaining attention, he lunged ahead, striking with righteous fury that threw the male soaring. With the orb in palm, Demonio stared harshly. What do you accept ladies for? Though assured in his stance, Demonio's embarrassed quiet betrayed an instant of internal pause. Chained in a chilly cell, the lady rested quietly, her form trembling beneath the heavy coat. Tears welled within her gaze as she raised her gaze, a quiet, heartfelt gratitude taking form. Ease swept over her as she clarified little had been done, his aura reassuring and composed gently. She asked for his identity, her stare lingering with wonder and a growing interest. He averted his gaze, hiding feeling, only acknowledging his profound admiration without revealing who he was. Demonio lifted her all of abrupt, leaving her astonished by the boldness of his abrupt action. They hurried down the hallway, her limbs clinging firmly as his stride not once hesitated once. She gazed at him in awe, touched by the uncommon honesty beyond his protective gesture. Reaching his tent, he softly aided her within, urging her to rest and regain power. With her safe and fading into rest, Demonio ready to slip aside, mission silently finished. Demonio attempted to retreat silently, but an unforeseen movement from beyond caused him to stumble. She dropped over him, the circumstance escalating past his expectations in abrupt, uneasy collision. His awareness fought to remain composed under the strain of proximity and her overwhelming presence. Seized in a misunderstanding, Demonio attempted to explain as strain stood up in the confined space. Overcome by confusion and growing heat, she lost command while he faced the instant in stunned disbelief. Demonio rested frozen beneath her, overcome by her abrupt assertiveness and unforeseen bodily strength. Her feelings poured out uncontrollably, pushed by uncertainty and a frantic need for kindness and comfort. All of abrupt, she closed the distance between them, acting on feelings she could not anymore restrain. Years of isolation and personal neglect swelled forth, leaving her unable to hold rear any longer. Beyond, the commotion carried on unseen, while a little partner reacted with disbelief at the intensity within. Through the evening, sounds from the tent surprised the partner, who was baffled by their endurance. At dawn, the lady rested frozen in surprise, realizing how far things had vanished. Worry packed the space as she checked on the one yet recovering within despite all things. He grinned in ease, satisfied and genuinely thankful for her presence. The lady collapsed to the floor, overcome by shame. Her form trembling as remorse accepted hold, tears welled within her stare as she admitted her actions, unable to meet his gaze. Although he'd rescued her, she confessed to losing command, pushed by feelings she failed to restrain. Head bent yet again, she provided penance, desperate to repair what she thought had been broken. Regardless of all things, Demonio sensed no fury, rather, he boldly considered on the encounter with satisfaction. Demonio, yet calm, softly asked her to lift her leader and assured her it wasn't plain. He explained that what happened was little more than an accident and didn't difficulty him. Surprised by his informal response, she remained up in a rush, embarrassed and disoriented. Now clothed, she called him formally, previously conscious of his status and his household identity. Regardless of her shame, she admitted her emotions of inadequacy, comparing herself to her own girl. Demonio firmly stated that he had no remorse, naming the encounter little less of stellar. Regardless of feeling guilty, he confessed she accepted the lead while he fell short to respond actively. She alarmed, misinterpreting his remarks, then maintained on finding a way to make things natural. Waiting quietly she remained, while Demonio questioned whether similar work were even necessary at all. A hovering partner suggested receiving her offer. To ease the mind of a uneasy lady rear at the Tridal household estate, Demonio considered on the idea of asking her a favor. Without any hesitation, he requested training from her. Standing firm in his decision to be her student, he clarified his dedication over the final 2 months and recognized her as the ideal teacher. Although doubtful it would entirely atone, Mama Mania received his appeal with a grave look. Thankful, Demonio agreed, though he hinted there was some matter crucial he had to reveal beforehand. Mama Mania clarified that regardless of numerous aristocrat requests, she had not once received a disciple before. All of abrupt, she dashed forward with fierce intensity, blade in palm and gaze locked on him. Demonio fought to keep up as her mighty blow charged him through the atmosphere. She explained that her only method of instruction was through fight, not soft instruction or idea. Demonio recalled her reputation within the title, somebody whose excitement surged during tough, exhilarating fights. With sharpened resolve, Demonio shifted ahead, weapon raised, ready to meet her strength head on. Mania launched forward with overwhelming force, her blade aiming straight at Demonio without any hesitation. He blocked just in a moment, stunned by her pace and identifying her overwhelming arcane presence. An enormous blast trailed her blow, lightning tore through the floor with devastating power and accuracy. Demonio countered, employing dark spears, redirecting her mana arts and earning short praise for his clever response. Watching carefully, she remembered the Tridal family's legacy of mastering darkness over numerous generations. Gossip encircled Demonio, portraying him as ruthless and proud. Feared even by fellow aristocrats, yet in fight, his resolve to grow firmer radiated through every blow he landed. Mania recalled his past warmth and their shared instant, questioning the truth beyond the severe gossip. Ashamed by the recollection, she scolded herself for letting those mind distract her mid-fight. Sensing her hesitation, Demonio ready to move, identifying a gap he couldn't afford to overlook. Mania identified the spell Dark Bind, commonly employed by dark users to restrict foe movement. She rejected its effect, assured similar magic couldn't restrain somebody of her strength and level. Abruptly, her natural leg locked in spot, halting her advance and shocking her entirely. Demonio had condensed the spell's power, focusing it on one lone point to maximize effect. Struck, she understood his arcane accuracy far exceeded what she had initially believed of him. Demonio unleashed a centered spell, his command precise, while Mania remained astonished by his progress. A fierce mana art slash tore through the atmosphere, forcing the red-haired lady to halt her advance. Before the foe could respond, an explosion of power burst, sending a shockwave across the battlefield. Knocked off balance, Demonio slammed to the floor, his blade knocked from his hold. He chuckled, struck by her power, admitting loss without bitterness. Despite his overwhelming work, silently stunned, she recognized her loss, beaten by a resolved 15-year-old youth. Struck by Demonio's advance, she pondered how mighty he could become with proper practice. Despite the battle's result, his uneasy power had plainly hindered his full promise. She extended a palm, encouraging further progress, identifying raw power beyond his unrefined technique. Conflicted feelings stirred within her, emotions growing where only guilt had remained instants earlier, smiling softly. She vowed to train him thoroughly, resolved to lead his growing strength. She announced herself his mentor, but intended to keep the disciple arrangement concealed from the warriors. Demonio carried up a bold query, awkwardly worried about consequences from their unplanned closeness. She joked him with a teasing grin, suggesting marriage if such an outcome happened. Carried by surprise by his enthusiastic response, she doubted he'd want somebody her age. Startled by his sincerity, she quietly stared, feelings flickering beyond wide, blushing gaze. She reassured Demonio that all things had been handled with mana arts. Dismissing the previously teased, trying to remain composed, he battled the embarrassed confusion stirring within him after her response. Elsewhere, she battled lingering effects of the disorienting potion, overcome by unknown sensations and growing strain. Rear at the Tridal estate, their master-disciple connection grew official, though maintained hidden from others. Staff murmured of Demonio's realization, silently respecting the hidden arrangement and his undeniable promise. Mania silently tended to flowers, her elegance drawing admiration from those conscious of her fresh part. Resolved, Demonio pledged to endure any hardship in practice for the sake of his beloved mentors. Spotting a disruption in his energy, she indicated out an imbalance near his torso. Without any hesitation, he reached out, inviting her to sense his energy directly through contact. Unintentionally leaning against her, the unforeseen closeness left both overwhelmed and stunned. Quiet and growing heat. The estate remained silent under the heavens as a reminder practice must remain disciplined and centered. Breathless and red-faced, Demonio withstood the session, overcome by the unforeseen intensity it insisted. Steam stood up between them as Demonio stayed yet, allowing her to approach, resolved and composed. She promised to lead him herself, leaning near to watch his movements. Earlier that daytime, they had encountered by the stony coast. Isolated from the world, she readied the scene for his practice, ensuring no distractions would disrupt the process. Harnessing his attention, Demonio went into a trance-like condition. His power swelled, presence flickering to existence as concentration strengthened. With violent power, he charged ahead. His fist shattered the towering stone with one lone blow, scattering rubble around him. Waiting among the debris, Demonio seized his air, though quiet. His gripped fist showed honor. Mania commended Demonio's work with a kind grin, acknowledging his rapid grasp of form enhancement magic. Facing her straight, Demonio replied with assurance. Not anymore just a pupil, he received her mentorship entirely. Practice started with blades raised, though her instruction was close and sometimes severe. It was not once careless. Each swing he formed was sharper than the final. Watching his motions, Mania observed the remarkable command he held. In battle, he absorbed all things she provided. His accuracy in controlling darkness startled even her. Though experienced herself, she had not once witnessed somebody internalize similar complex techniques so instinctively. Mania watched cautiously, impressed by Demonio's progress. Regardless of his youth, his power surpassed what she formerly possessed at the same age. Practice intensified. She leaned against his rear, palms guiding his center through close touch. She transferred her energy, trying to raise his endurance. Thick energy swelled into his form, the stream overcome his awareness. A slight grin appeared on her lips, conscious the stimulation might test more than his arcane endurance. Fighting to remain centered, Demonio responded to the strain. The unfamiliar closeness left him embarrassed, but he steadied himself, aware the purpose beyond it was grave. Staying calm, Mania cautioned him of actual risks. Foes could use inattention through appeal. Mania leaned near one more time, assuring him that this too counted as practice. Regardless of his uncertainty, Demonio nodded, fighting to maintain his composure and attention under the uneasy conditions. Drops of sweat appeared as his internal determination hesitated. Privately, he pleaded himself to remain grave. Their mind drifted in separate directions, his toward training, hers toward feeling. Afterward, the two strolled jointly toward the estate. Demonio thought he had stopped the grim outcome from mania. Their connection had grown firmer, yet uncertainties yet remained. Seated throughout from her at the table, he silently considered. The tomorrow was unsure currently that the title's plot had altered. Throughout meal, Demonio unintentionally called Mania as Mama Maniana. Embarrassed, he remained and attempted to explain himself. Words tumbled out in alarm as he seized. He meant to say Mentor Mania rather, hoping to undo the uneasy tension. Mania grinned softly and brushed off the error. Her palm arrived out to pat his leader, showing that she didn't mind being named Mama. Laughter spread through the room as their atmosphere moved into something more rested. Unseen by them, another person watched silently from the hallway, expression unreadable. With puffed cheeks, the other lady gazed at the moment unfolding. Silently, she recalled herself that she was his actual mom. Practice continued at the stony field, but Demonio's fiery aura suggested at strain. Maniana indicated, cautioning him about leaving similar comments close to his stepmother. Rear at the estate, Mama Rosa greeted him kindly. Her cheerful manner calmed his nerves after the fierce session. She commended his advance, mentioning what the troops had reported. Demonio modestly attributed his mentor for the successes. All of abrupt, Rosa embraced him, scolding his sweaty condition before he could respond. She nudged him toward the washroom with a soft push. Instants afterward, turmoil burst. Demonio found himself stripped and racing through the chamber in uncertainty, wondering how things intensified so quick. After collecting Demonio's abandoned garments, Mama Rosa stopped. Interest overcame her as she lifted the cloth nearer. She identified his smell, yet it wasn't just his. A second, distinctly feminine trace remained on the cloth, igniting distrust. Elsewhere, Demonio rested in the washroom, oblivious of the strain building elsewhere. A sense of ease washed over him following the day's incidents. The serene instant was interrupted when a tone beside him formed a casual appeal. The mood moved slightly, gentle banter echoing across the steamy chamber. Just as he answered, the entry groaned ajar. A pair of unknown legs stepped into sight, drawing his complete notice. Covered in a towel, Rosa went into the washroom area unannounced. Her soft grin disguised the strain her presence carried, taking over without any hesitation. She began washing Demonio's back. Her remarks emphasized her part in his existence, reinforcing personal closeness with assertive concern. Close by, their partner rested, oblivious of the circumstance unfolding. Beyond existence shifted on. Rosa carried on supporting him with meals crafted with devotion, while Maniana shoved him to his limits with stern practice. Later, both ladies reinforced their guidance, Rosa kindly and tradition, Maniana through teasing trials. Demonio found himself encircled by two powerful maternal people, every pulling in distinct personal directions. Under the shadow of woods, Demonio practiced steadily. Rosa silently supported him, observing every movement carefully. Seasons went by. His progress grew undeniable. His mastery of mana arts flourished. By winter, his strength remained tall, prepared to face what rested forward. Shortly, he faced a huge creature. There was no pause. With one lone sweeping blow, he unleashed the full power of his power. As Pool reached, it marked a fresh chapter. Dressed keenly, Demonio readied for his first day within the academy. His guardians noticed him off with silent honor. Both moms remained together. Rosa hoped him well with maternal kindness, while Maniana provided steady guidance. Their remarks rang with trust, aware he was ready for the world past their estate. As Demonio approached the carriage, Rosa and Maniana grinned kindly at his rear. Their aura remained in his mind even as he stepped aside. Within the carriage, he rested silently. The burden of what rested forward calmed over him. His thoughts replayed the title's incidents. He knew this was where the actual conflict started, the aspect where the people he cared for would suffer if he did little. Resolve substituted pause. With a sharp smirk, he decided to defy the initial scenario and reshape the tomorrow himself. Noblesse Mana Arts School remained tall in the capital, renowned for producing top mana arts users. Fresh pupils assembled in the assembly hall, listening as the principal greeted them. Among the crowd stood resolved faces, every aware of the academy's intense reputation and its part in shaping tomorrow leaders. Formally orientation finished, pupils were informed of the grueling admission exams. The atmosphere moved as strain spread through the room. Trials started with arcane assessments. One lone student's incantation shattered the crystal, stunning onlookers. Battle trials shoved pupils to their limits. A fire incantation clashed against intense blade strikes. Rivalries surged. Prideful aristocrats declined to lose, but power solitary would decide success. Before astonished classmates, Demonio cast an advanced-level spell that overwhelmed his opponent immediately. Surprise circulated throughout the observers. Nobody had anticipated similar strength from a new arrival. Murmurs of his genius circulated, yet his real power surpassed all gossip. The admission test scores were published. Demonio placed first, his identity etched over all others. Solitary by the pain, he celebrated happily. Raising his palm to the heavens, he named out to the folk he cherished most, boldly announcing his achievement. Two ladies seemed through arcane communication, his teacher and his mom. Their heartfelt praise spread through the room warmly. Well, aside from the school, Demonio's mother and mentor exchanged kind words. Every voiced faith and worry, prepared to support him if hardship ever came his way. Solitary yet again, Demonio considered on their warmth silently. He decided to labor even harder and not allow their expectations go to waste. His placement in Group C carried slight disappointment, but it also signaled the beginning of his task. This marked the official beginning of the tale he had lengthily anticipated. Closed by pupils lamented their rankings, visibly annoyed with their scores. Hearing their complaints, Demonio stayed quiet, hiding his own thoughts while walking past them without speaking. He afterward discovered the academy's system functioned on ability. Classes were placed from A to E entirely based on academic and arcane performance, seeing the stage for intense competition. The academy's stern hierarchy rewarded top performers with privileges, while weaker pupils withstood lesser facilities. Regardless of the freedom granted to pupils, Demonio avoided plots. Within the title world he once knew, he had been an unmatched class top instead than attract difficulty. He intended, cautiously staying under the radar. He would still trail some aspects of the source title's progression. His previously showing had been deliberately bound. Drawing too much notice would be risky, so he selected to appear as a standard top rather of a prodigy. Though he gripped rear, Demonio yet secured first spot. A year had went by since his reincarnation, and his command over incidents had only grown firmer. Following unyielding practice, Demonio felt his form unlocking hidden promise. Each blow and movement grew sharper and faster. Regardless of advance, he stayed cautious. Rewriting the title's destiny would demand even more strength than he currently possessed. Murmurs circulated across the school. Gossip swirled about a mysterious newcomer and normal civilian. Unlike the usual top pupils, certain had noticed him at the test site, though competent. His aura sensed disturbing. His renown rose swiftly but not entirely for the natural reasons. Lone pupil rejected him as frail. He was placed in E-class, missed mana arts, yet gripped remarkable swordsmanship. Principal Siguro reviewed the pupil files, observing two exceptional newcomers. One was Demonio of the traitor household, the other, a non-magical civilian with unknown promise. A sure teacher volunteered to manage both. With stern determination, she announced her intent to train them into obedient rule, abiding pupils. Within Group I, a Demonio's aura-activated strain. His reputation came before him, sparking uneasy speculation and exaggerated gossip among classmates who feared his chilly expression and unfamiliar past. Regardless of the unease, others were interested. Female pupils neared him with enthusiasm, keen to study jointly. Certain even confessed they'd valued him for a lengthy moment. Watching the shift, his hovering partner remarked on the dual nature of notice. Dread carried distance, but admiration pulled people nearer with distinct motives. Demonio's blank response pulled remarks. His blank look was unreadable, leaving behind others uncertain whether he cared at all. Young women close by paused under his stare or lack thereof. Misjudging his indifference, they silently came back to their chairs. The formidable instructor presented herself as Gloria. She wasn't just the homeroom teacher. She also gripped the part of year leader, commanding instant power. Her renown came prior to her. Known for stern training and intense strength, she held dual status as professor and warrior, earning admiration and dread alike. Despite rarely appearing in the title originally, Gloria had a loyal fanbase. In this world, Demonio currently remains straight under her watch, leaving her part far more significant. Gloria lectured about arcane aptitude, emphasizing that noble lineage often carried normal talent, but talent solitary meant little without dedication. With thunderous power, she announced that every pupil must rise past their limits. Weakness wouldn't be tolerated, and arrogance would be crushed without any hesitation. Her shout quieted the lecture hall immediately. Pupils straightened up in dread as she insisted finished obedience. No one risked test her aura, disappointed by their meek responses. Gloria questioned the worth of nobility. Even a sliver of her mana arts had overcome them. She weighed them unremarkable. Yet one presence pulled her notice. Demonio's piercing stare locked upon her, disturbing her assurance. In that instant, she understood she couldn't judge this group by appearances solitary. Gloria misread Demonio's quiet stare as resistance and raged. She thought he was taunting her skill as an educator. Still amused, Demonio lightly answered, wearing a smile. His light-hearted remark solely fueled her resolve to training him properly. Afterward, while walking the halls, Demonio considered on the academy's arrangement. Despite aware of the title system, much of the school stayed unknown to him in this world. As he surveyed his surroundings, he confessed that numerous pupils were unfamiliar to him. The title only highlighted key characters, leaving behind much of the world unknown. Over lunch, he lightly watched peers. Tina, an Elven Nation pupil, and Sakura, from the Eastern Islands, drew his attention. Demonio remembered the two girls were titled female leads with explicit scenes, but he constantly passed those. At the cafeteria, a young woman was ridiculed by proud pupils for being an E rank and sitting in the center. He identified her as Rebecca, a major heroine in the game's prior story. Her look activated an unforeseen recollection. Just then, another person seemed blonde, composed, and confrontational. Demonio identified him immediately as the title's hero and readied himself for the inevitable clash. Ray Bold finally appeared within the school, his presence instantly noticed by Demonio. Observing from above, identified as the source game's protagonist, Ray brought an air of assurance. Demonio silently recognized his part and significance. With irritation, Demonio voiced his disdain, labeling Ray as both a danger and a problematic person with questionable preferences. Elsewhere, Ray confronted ridicule from upper-ranked aristocrats despite their taunts about his group and lack of magic. He held steady under their abuse. Although Wade a powerless peasant, Ray gripped promise. Within the title, he relied solely on swordsmanship, something that still held real in this reality. Ray announced his determination to rise through the school without mana arts. His passion rose responses, but Demonio stayed skeptical. Regardless of Ray's outsider declaration, the reality was distinct. He belonged to a mighty bloodline and would eventually unlock exclusive old mana arts. In the title's prior story, Demonio suffered a humiliating defeat against Ray. That loss marked the beginning of his downfall, outcome in a grim demise. Aware of this, Demonio weighed building a friendly connection with Ray, aligning with the hero could secure life and offer support in tomorrow battles. Still, internal feelings clouded that choice. Recollections of the title and resentment maintained him from receiving Ray. Pardon didn't arrive readily. Delayed at evening, a virtual heroine on display voiced her loneliness. Reaching into the spirit of her viewer, faced with a pivotal decision within the title, he hesitated. The options remained on display, one urging him to leave, the other to remain. Ultimately, Dread won. Worrying about actual consequences, he backed out of the fantasy and shut the program down, muttering regret as he remained and departed. Elsewhere, Demonio strolled solitary through the school halls. He attempted to detach himself from the personal spiral activated by his latest interactions. Ray faced a team of pupils and swiftly overcome them. One young woman neared him, praising his power. Demonio abruptly stiffened, sensing a rush of bloodlust aimed straight at him. Somewhere else, the script carried on to unfold just as the title had foreseen. The protagonist started building further connections with the young women. Following the written path rear in the lecture hall, a short instructor posed a challenge to her pupils, demanding in reply to a difficult magic incantation. Without any hesitation, Demonio raised his hand and delivered the correct answer. His grave expression astonished the other pupils, who not once expected such training from him. The teacher remained struck. Demonio had memorized all things flawlessly, still behaving like the model pupil. Demonio cheerfully announced his affection for Gloria's lessons, attempting to appear like the perfect pupil. Afterward, he gazed out the pane, contemplating his stance. Straying too far from the title's prior route might render his past knowledge worthless, and that risk troubled him. Not far aside, Carol and Mina were trapped by seniors. Greg, one of the older students, trapped Carol with a self-satisfied smirk. His threats were subtle yet menacing, leaving it obvious that resisting him would lead to expulsion. From afar, Demonio observed quietly, though hesitant at first. He was incapable to overlook the circumstance. As peers, Carol and Mina deserved protection, and he was the only one close by who could move. With resolve blazing within his gaze, Demonio launched himself forward, declaring his desire to make his mothers proud. His abrupt look stunned both the aggressors and the young woman they were harassing. Realizations circulated swiftly. The seniors rose uneasy upon realizing who he was, the top first year pupil from the infamous traitor household. Though his aura was intimidating, Demonio stayed calm. The older pupils attempted to downplay their dread, reassuring one another while quietly backing off. Demonio called them courteously, saying sorry as a courtesy, but within himself, he remembered the title's version of his character, one who mercilessly crushed anybody who dared provoke him. Waiting before the seniors, Demonio bent respectfully. He recognized the girls as his peers and provided to accept responsibility in their spot. Regardless of their arrogance, he stayed calm. Privately, he was resolved not to become a proud villain. That show of modesty was ridiculed. Seizing the chance, the older pupil assaulted, kicking Demonio all of abrupt. Battered and on the floor, he withstood their ridicule. They believed surrender was frailty and belittled him, spitting abuse about his background and family. But their last slur moved too far. Fury burst within Demonio. In one rapid motion, he hit rear, channeling fury into a mighty counterattack that shattered their self-satisfied expressions. Demonio clutched the senior firmly, immense him with raw power. The power he unleashed stunned everyone, including his rival. That evening, he came back a state to a recognizable scene. One of his mothers asked him to rest beside her, stating it was normal for a child to do so. Embarrassed yet obedient, he rested down. Her serene breathing spread through the room as she swiftly fell asleep. In his rest she moved, leaning nearer. The accidental touch surprised him. Fighting with his mind, he drew rear and rested at the edge of the bed. Resolved to resist temptation, he gripped his fists and recalled himself. Her affection was maternal, not to be misinterpreted. With a rush of feeling, Demonio landed a crushing strike. The power of his punch hurled the senior across the yard, eventually venting the frustration he had lengthy bound. As the beaten team staggered aside, Demonio formed one thing clear: his mother's fondness was sacred. Unexpectedly, Carol and Mina held on to him fondly. Their actions puzzled him, as neither girl existed in the game originally. This unforeseen development departed him uncertain how to respond. Gossip swiftly circulated. Pupils murmured about Demonio defeating Greg, the third, year placed number 3. Murmurs distorted the reality, turning his declaration of maternal regard into some matter else entirely. Word of Demonio's deeds circulated swiftly, raising worries among faculty. Murmurs even asked whether he planned to dominate the school. Regardless of his intentions, Demonio discovered himself labeled a troublemaker yet again. Still, Carol and Mina had previously clarified all things. Gloria heard and recognized that his deeds were pushed by self-defense, not malice. Though she understood the circumstance, she couldn't overlook the turmoil he caused. As a result, she commanded him to attempt 20 laps, both as training and a public example. Yet at her rear stern expression, she noticed through his honesty. Impressed by his candor, Gloria confessed she had misjudged him and provided a little grin of approval. Gloria softly recognized Demonio's work, patting his leader regardless of his renown. She not once noticed him as a rogue, different from the rest of the staff who treated him like a peril. Gloria called him like any other pupil. Her consistency mirrored how she behaved within the title. She weighed training with kindness. Her fair treatment earned his regard, and Demonio quietly pledged to not once disappoint her. When peril loomed, he recalled the fate she suffered in the game originally. Resolved, he declined to allow her features that end again. 1 month into the school year, pupils assembled before the labyrinth admission for their first major trial. Prior to departure, the teacher emphasized care. Despite being a lower-level labyrinth, she warned that underestimating the risks could prove deadly in actual battle situations. This expedition was required for lower-ranked pupils as aspect of their coursework. Upper-class pupils still had the option to participate voluntarily, creating an obvious divide in obligation. Among the crowd, one lone person remained out: Demonio, a black-haired pupil from Group A, selected to go in solitary. Although the challenge was designed for groups, Demonio accepted the solo task without any hesitation. Demonio sighed, apparently unconcerned, yet his aura confused the others. His real cause stayed concealed from the rest. In the game originally, Mama Gloria was fated to die during this very extracurricular group. While others treated it like routine practice, Demonio watched cautiously. He battled intensely, eliminating creatures precisely while keeping an eye on unfolding events. The first daytime went by without event. As evening dropped, the pupils rested within the labyrinth. Afterward that evening, she disclosed some matter personal to the team. Gloria was a mom and her girl Geldo was regarding to turn 6. Her kindness softened the atmosphere, but Demonio stayed vigilant, resolved to alter the grim route fate once dictated. Gloria grinned softly as she described her daughter, naming her gentle, sweet, and entirely unlike herself. Her tone brought honor but also silent regret. Overcome by labor, she rarely formed a state. She admitted to relying too much on staff and intended to accept moment off to focus on being a proper mother. Observing others relax, Gloria recalled herself of promises formed. She hoped to accept her daughter to the market and a playthings that once sensed trivial now weighed heavily close by. A pupil sensed a chill, though little had vanished wrong yet, unease crept in. A vague dread towered. Some matter about Gloria's remarks felt too last. To Demonio, all things was too recognizable. Every of Gloria's lines rang written demise flags from the title. Household dreams, one final break. A sincere vow, classic signs of an impending calamity he had no intention of allowing to recur. Difficulty approached as foreseen, the foe organization, targeting female leads with special lineages, ready to blow. When the assault started, she accepted order, blade in palm. She charged ahead alone, determined to defend her students even at the cost of her life. In the title originally, this moment marked her end. Her demise led to a tearful funeral, whereas her daughter Gelda sobbed, naming out for a mom who would not once return. Demonio gripped his determination. He wasn't moving to allow this written calamity recur. Although he had weighed avoiding the group to remain secure, doing so would blind him to foe movement. The pupils stumbled upon a hot pool facility within the dungeon, unexpectedly maintained by the school for practice purposes. As they readied to go in, cautions rushed between the teams. Worries about the unsteady walls lifted strain, especially from the young women. Demonio abruptly recalled a written title event on this exact evening. The wall between baths would collapse, causing chaos. Concerned about the result, he sprinted aside, frantic to avoid the accidental exposure. The danger of being seized in that incident would derail his schemes entirely. After a short attempt, he located another pool aside from the primary site. Isolated and silent, it provided a perfect spot to bathe safely, aside from the others and the looming incident he aimed to avoid. While relaxing in the secluded hot pool, Demonio observed a person through the mist. Some matter sensed off. To his shock, the individual bathing close by was nobody other than Mama Gloria herself. The circumstance intensified immediately. Alarm overcame him. He shifted and raced in shame as Gloria screamed, her dignity compromised by the unforeseen meeting. She couldn't understand how a pupil finished up in the same pool. Her look blended uncertainty with distress. Embarrassed, Demonio regretted, stating he didn't know she was there. The whole event veered dangerously off script, adding yet another danger to his task of keeping her alive. Gloria calmed herself and neared. She announced it was fine. A veteran like her wouldn't be shaken by a pupil seeing her undressed. Demonio, though composed on the top, instantly understood she was ashamed but too proud to show it openly. She started explaining how her form employed to be more toned, blaming her current softness on overwork and mispractice. He heard quietly, entertained by her excuses. Nobody had questioned yet. She uneasily clarified herself. To him, it was charming. Eventually, she laughed and joked him. Destiny had placed her a supposedly aged demon professor as his bath partner, joking that he'd raised the less straw. Gloria rested silently. Showing uncertainty, she thought her pupils viewed her as dull, preferring younger ladies rather. Suddenly, Demonio rejected her mind. He hurried to her, naming her a wonderful instructor, far more captivating than anybody else. Without any hesitation, he admitted his feelings. He announced he genuinely hoped to see her form. Not out of accident, but desire. Tears welled within his stare. In the title originally, there were no such emotional events, and this moment felt like a dream fulfilled, surprised by his candor. Gloria stiffened. Her tone trembled as she attempted to respond, overwhelmed by his straightforward confession and her own puzzled feelings. Rumble rang in the range. Gloria, embarrassed and retreating, scolded Demonio for his earlier comments before leaving behind the hot pool. Solitary again, Demonio yelled after her, reaffirming his regard and admiration. Her quiet remained still after she dressed. Despite her stern expression, Gloria was incapable to overlook the strange aura around that pupil. Some matter about him disturbed her strongly. Somewhere else, in the dungeon's lower depths, a cloaked person felt activity. They disguised their aura, but yet detected movement. One individual remained out. The disguised foe understood the energy signature, sensed familiar. A troubling possibility appeared in their mind. It might be the same person from the legendary Witch of Lightning event, suggesting at a further danger than anticipated. Abruptly, the cloaked foe formed their action. An enormous magic circle seemed as they started executing a revised scheme, forcing close-by students into defensive positions. And tremor trailed. From within the collapsing rock, a huge hydra erupted out, terrifying the close-by team. Alarms swiftly circulated. Gloria raced into sight, gaze widening in astonished disbelief. The creature facing them was no normal danger. It was a hydra, a creature far too powerful for this labyrinth level. She asked how similar a legendary beast had been summoned in a practice zone under school supervision. The consequences were strongly disturbing. Elsewhere, one of the pupils pulled his blade, trembling. Despite his courage, the overwhelming power of the Hydra's aura departed, most frozen in spot as the creature charged. The little partner thrashed desperately, trying to wake Demonio. Alarms sounded in the range as turmoil unfolded somewhere else. An enormous two-headed serpent erupted into the cave, sending alarmed pupils fleeing in every direction. While others retreated, one lone youth charged ahead. Gripping his sword tightly, he dashed toward the monster without any hesitation, eyes sharp and focused on the threat ahead. Jumping tall, he carried his weapon down upon the serpent's skull. The force rang out, yet the creature didn't falter, its scales resisting the strike with unnatural power. Regardless of his work, the blade barely pierced its hide. Observing close by, students cowered beyond rocks, dread overtaking their faith from the smoke. A lady emerged, wand in palm, commanding aura undeniable with one assault. She stopped the creature. Gloria's steady order quieted all protest. With her rear shifted, she offered the youth no decision but to obey. A torrent of flames swelled from her staff, engulfing the passage with immense power. Her mana arts blazed vivid and unyielding. Resolved to manage the danger solitary, she reinforced her stance. No pause stayed as her armament shone with strength. Somewhere else, Demonio dashed through the halls, annoyed by his delayed beginning. His partner floated alongside him, exchanging banter mid-rush. Reaching the moment, he stiffened. The circumstance wasn't as anticipated. According to the title's script, this assault shouldn't have started yet. Pupils fled through the cave passage, following Mama Gloria's orders. Amid them, the youth grasped the timeline unfolding just as the plot had outlined. He confessed his current frailty, but trusted in Gloria's power. Alongside him, a girl held on to faith, recalling Gloria's history as a top warrior within the title. This was Gloria's demise scene. Her sacrifice bought time for others to survive. Her demise acted solely as narrative fuel for the hero's development, a supporting character written to perish, recalled only through the force of her last move. Elsewhere, Demonio hexed the delay. He identified that the ideal awakening should have happened throughout Gloria's fight, not afterward. The twin-headed serpent emerged from the cave with fangs bared, but Demonio remained in its root unmoved. He recognized their power yet didn't waver. Drawing his weapon, he remembered the brutal practice that forged him. A coordinated assault trailed. Demonio unleashed a sharp slash while Gloria hit precisely, both targeting the creature with deadly power. Their combined assault ripped the earth apart. In the aftermath, Gloria lay peacefully alongside Demonio, their bond plainly strengthened through shared life. In that silent instant, her bashful grin met his embarrassed stare. The peril had went by, but some matter fresh had started to grow. In the silence of evening, the two discovered themselves solitary. Kindness and closeness substituted the earlier turmoil, their bond deepening past remarks. Instants afterward, Gloria seemed visibly radiant, her expression gentle and assured. Elsewhere, a soul close by responded with exaggerated shock and embarrassed awe afterward. She bent her leader genuinely, showing a mix of modesty and concern. Her gesture suggested at some matter more sincere than mere fondness. Somewhere else, Demonio continued the battle with unwavering attention. His determination blazed as he announced the fruits of his practice. Beside him, the hovering soul warned him about overexerting himself, especially in gentle of latest fierce activities. Demonio hurried through the passage, urgency in his paces. Overhead, his partner remarked on the lingering effects of the potion yet afflicting Gloria. Facing the multi-headed Hydra solitary, Gloria remained breathless yet defiant. Her hold strengthened around her armament as the towering beast towered nearer. Regardless of numerous strikes, her assaults barely departed a sign. She'd locked the cave's way out to ensure no one could come back. Although drained, she understood collapse wasn't an option, not yet. One lone minute, even a second, that's all she had to buy. Gloria charged herself at the beast again, trying to stall it long enough for her pupils to exit. A mighty strike hurled Gloria against the cave wall. Debris exploded regarding her as the Hydra advanced. Wounded and exhausted, she dropped to the floor. Her mind dimmed as her form fell short her, whispering resignation. Lying yet, she clutched the earth and prayed her pupils had fled safely. Even the one who often caused difficulty remained in her worry. A fallen trinket rested close by, displaying the smiling features of a youthful young woman. Recollections came back, a loveless union selected by their households. Her husband, lengthy vanished, had abandoned them with little but debt and a kid. In the isolation that trailed, her daughter grew her anchor, the one cause she kept battling. Delayed into the evening, Gloria labored tirelessly. In exchange for her debt ease, she acted under the school and warriors. Although obligations weighed on her, instruction carried genuine fulfillment. The lecture hall grew a spot whereas she sensed purpose. On a certain daytime, difficulty arose at labor. Gloria, preparing to leave, entrusted her girl to the concern of others one more moment. As she crouched to reassure her, promises spilled out delayed moment jointly. Tomorrow days off, her girl stayed silent, stare heavy. Forcing a grin, the kid said steadily. Beyond the bold look, her gaze welled up, revealing how often she'd received being second to duty. Lying broken on the floor, Gloria arrived towards the trinket that had slipped from she believed regarding missed chances. Instants she hadn't carried, remarks she hadn't stated, moments she'd not once get rear. Clutching the keepsake to her torso, she shook. Apologies poured out, not for failure in fight yet. For neglecting what truly counted. The Hydra towered one more moment. Fangs bared, it swelled ahead. Yet she fell short to flinch, choosing to embrace what she'd lost. Abrupt eruption of shadowy mana arts burst between them. Binding strands covered the creature in a fierce snare. From the darkness arrived salvation and unforeseen reprieve from a spell of overwhelming strength. Jail of darkness. Gloria stiffened at the unforeseen tone, her gaze widening at the remarks that shattered her despair. A shadowy silhouette emerged, promising to rescue her. Darkness stood up, nearby her in protective power. With blade raised, Demonio remained before her. Allies reached at his rear, prepared to turn the tide. Demonio confronted the towering multi-headed creature with no flinching. As others recoiled, he shifted forward, unshaken. Observing in stunned disbelief, a lady understood the truth. That incantation too advanced for a pupil had arrived from him. Similar immense strength wasn't normal. Only top warriors were capable of reaching that level. Far past the norm, Demonio reappeared immediately. His form emerging from darkness. Teleportation like that shouldn't have been feasible for somebody of his level. Uncertainty circulated among the others as they attempted to grasp the circumstance. Steadily surveying the moment, Demonio recognized the setup. The path had been locked previously thanks to his planning. A partner trailed at his rear, struck by his foresight. The evening before, Demonio had infiltrated the labyrinth and planted teleportation circles in hidden. A concealed sign shone faintly on the woman's shoulder. With no her aware, he had secretly embedded teleportation coordinates upon her skin. He understood the risks. If the foe discovered the setup, their ambush could have arrived still earlier. Abruptly, the enemy charged an intense beam of arcane power. Demonio remained prepared, his weapon lifted as the gentle roared toward him. The explosion burst with immense power. Shrapnel and shockwaves tore through the atmosphere. Just in moment, one companion hurled herself at Demonio, pushing him obvious of the blast's epicenter. The monstrous Hydra loomed in the distance, its heads lifted as the cliffside began to tremble violently. Demonio readied his stance, his dark power swirling about him. His look strengthened. This beast was an aspect of the normal script. Regardless of the turmoil, his attention stayed on her security. His enchanted coat unraveled, wrapping protectively around the lady at his rear. He didn't pause to shield her, rather of himself. Comprehension the gravity of the danger, she begged with him to leave. Solitary, he might exit. She was wounded, slowing them both down. Turning aside from the way out, Demonio refused her plea. He neared with determination, refusing to abandon her. Demonio extended his coat toward the wounded lady, acknowledging the offering she formed for her pupils. His remarks hit her strongly. She had risked all things, and now somebody identified the burden of her deeds. Without any hesitation, he shed the remains of his coat, his resolve laid bare with every movement, waiting steady. He announced his intent. His aim was hardly any more survival, it was her protection. Facing the towering Hydra, Demonio shifted forward. Power surged as his restraints began to break, and his real strength awakened. Demonio lifted his weapon, channeling strength through his form at his rear. The lady warned of the risks, but he leaned forward, unfazed by the danger. Shadowy strands covered around his arm, and the foe responded too late. Power swelled violently, disturbing even the beast. From afar, she felt the shift, the raw mana arts pouring from him, sensed huge and unnatural, more than plain overflow. His energy compressed quickly, sharpening into lethal power. He advanced precisely, declaring vengeance for Mama Gloria as the creature was seized in his incantation. Centered and unflinching, he gripped his fist with his target locked, Demonio readied for a decisive blow, one he wouldn't miss. Demonio unleashed his fresh technique, a refined version of the Jail of Gloom, currently transformed into Shredder. The debris calmed, Demonio stayed yet. Muscles tense as fragments of rock floated around him, remnants of his unleashed strength. From afar, she observed in awe. He had not only perfected an advanced incantation, yet evolved it mid-battle. Logic couldn't explain what she had just witnessed. While another person in a cloak watched quietly, Demonio steadily neared the remains. He chose to incinerate the monster's parts to prevent any regeneration. As flames roared, the cloaked observer murmured. Demonio's strength was undeniable, but his tomorrow ally or danger stayed unsure. The hooded person appeared aside, intent on reporting the incident. All things he did, he seized, acted the progenitor mom. Not lengthy after, the warrior squad arrived at the site. Gloria and Demonio were secure. Their fight ended. Several days afterward, the Mana Arts Academy's festival continued. In the past, the school and the order started an investigation into the assault. Gloria, entirely recovered, visited Demonio in individual. Without any hesitation, she expressed her gratitude with an emotional embrace. Throughout their silent tea, she recognized the reality. The scheme had named for a teamwork, yet he had carried down the Hydra solitary. Demonio steadily assured her that the result was enough. Everyone was secure, and to him, that was all that counted. Her recollection came back to the instant she gripped her girl. The kindness in that embrace recalled her of what truly counted. Tears welled within her stare. She had arrived far too near to leaving behind her kid solitary. Life sensed like a wonder, thankful yet overcome. She stumbled over her remarks, resolved to offer certain form of thanks, though unsure how. Demonio formed a plain appeal. He hoped to keep seeing her as she was currently alive, secure, and smiling. Ease washed over Demonio. He had averted the grim destiny that expected Mama Gloria. From currently on, she'd remain a trusted aura in his existence. Gloria's look moved in shock. She hadn't anticipated his appeal to be so genuine or so close. The recollection of their previously meeting surfaced. His remarks had been impulsive, but his emotions weren't concealed yet. She asked why anybody would see worth in her currently as she was. Though embarrassed, she received his honesty out of regard for the one who rescued her. She agreed to honor his appeal, still unconventional, it appeared. With a teacher's intuition, she answered, not with resistance, but with silent comprehension. Her actions were hardly any more about obligation but trust, provided to someone who saw her differently than the world did. Gloria, seized between obligation and shame, steadied herself. Her expression brought both reluctance and determination as she attempted to trail through with what she thought was expected. The quiet disturbed her. She misread his pause as disappointment and questioned if he wanted some matter even more, head forcing herself to confront that dread straight. Demonio remained mixed, visibly embarrassed. The circumstance had spiraled, and though he attempted to remain composed, her remarks pierced through his defenses. Overcome, he excused himself. Elsewhere from beyond, a thankful tone echoed a humorous contrast to the strain indoors. Far aside, within the school, the headmistress reviewed the situation through a report. She confirmed tomorrow arrangements, previously counting on Demonio's involvement in the coming weeks. She received the assignment with assurance, seeing it as a chance to support the school straight. Though her look eased, interest remained. The principal, entertained, considered on how far she'd arrive. Declaring herself a responsible grown-up, she affirmed her stance. Her voice weighed honor with a clue of self-awareness. A mighty sorceress, amused and interested, remarks on the unforeseen choice to take on a disciple. Somewhere else, a graceful noblewoman reflects on her reasons for supporting the school. At Noblest Mana Art School, murmurs circulate about a pupil named Ray, recognized as a powerless E-class peasant. His renown is anything but impressive in a school that values mana arts over all. Yet recollections of a latest labyrinth assault paint a distinct picture. Ray, despite lacking magic, led the charge to evacuate fellow students, facing down danger without any hesitation. During the turmoil, Ray beaten beasts blocking the exit route. Thanks to his work, everyone fled unharmed, his courage rewriting the narrative murmured beyond his rear. Ray's growing renown circulated swiftly through the school, praise trailed his latest bravery, and admiration rose among peers different from normal threats. These slimes targeted solely the fibers of clothing. Female pupils discovered themselves at danger, with the creatures approaching in a disturbingly specific pattern. Within instants, uniforms began to dissolve. Alarm set in as several young women were departed embarrassed, desperately attempting to cover themselves while encircled by aggressive slimes. The circumstance intensified as clothing vanished entirely. Ashamed and helpless, the young women yelled for aid. Steadily entering the moment, Demonio accepted command. With calm power, he covered the young women with arcane darkness and scolded the public exposure. His chivalrous deeds departed a powerful impression. While Demonio rested at the balcony, pupils close by gushed over his latest deeds. Gossip about his shifts circulated swiftly. Once viewed with distrust, his efforts during the dungeon incident and cooperation with Miss Gloria began to shift public opinion in his favor. Within the school courtyard, students assembled for a special lesson. Gloria, having came back from her break and fled her game, determined demise, remained tall as the guest teacher. Shortly after, another respected person seemed. Lady Mafeana, a renowned member of the Seven Magia, presented herself to the group. As the two powerful ladies stood before the crowd, Demonio watched silently. His stare remained subtly curious, while Lady Mafeana encountered it with silent realization. Overcome with feeling, Demonio found himself in astonished disbelief. Events unfolding before him never happened within the title. For once in his life, joy overcame logic, leaving him flustered and thrilled. Lady Mafeana, unfazed by the notice, cautioned the group of the test forward. Her teasing yet fierce manner suggested no one would be spared throughout practice. With assurance, she demonstrated the proper way to harness mighty mana arts. Her instructions, although technically noise, missed clarity. The lesson rose more extreme. Pupils were commanded into one-on-one duels with fists and incantations soaring. Watching from the sidelines, Demonio and Deathpina shared mind telepathically. Regardless of her encounter, Mafeana's instruction departed much to be desired. Gloria's severe practice departed pupils shaken. Regardless of her power and assurance, her approach overcome those unused to raw battle. As gossip circulated, Demonio's power grew a topic of interest. A fellow pupil discovered from the principal that he had once practiced under Mafeana, which clarified his abnormal skills. Afterward, Gloria shared a silent instant with her girl. Although their moment jointly was serene, her fondness had plainly worn thin. When questioned regarding her break, Gloria replied fondly, yet she swiftly altered the subject, suggesting it some matter more personal between her and Demonio. In a gentle tone, she recalled him of their private connection. Embarrassed, he answered with a title she preferred, Mama Gloria. Gloria snapped rear to attention, swiftly reminding Demonio there was no moment for distractions. Within the lounge, Demonio instantly felt strain. Mafeana remained across from a white-haired youth, Goldorn, the title's primary hero. As the moment moved, an unmistakable presence packed the next chamber. The signature smell of a pipe accompanied a silent aura. The mighty witch welcomed him steadily, her remarks sliced through the quiet as she called him straight, Demonio traitor. Before surprise could settle, an excited person erupted in hovering and angelic glee. With a glowing halo, the odd chibi, like being named out happily, identifying the lady as Granny Sagaro. Sagaro Shellheis, the principal of Noblessa School, remained as a mighty person cloaked in magic. Despite her limited part in the game originally, Sagaro was popular among select players. Especially Demonio, currently seated before her, he stayed unusually centered while telepathically conversing with Deathpena about his preferences. With everyone assembled, the principal moved the talk to grave matters. Goldorn and Demonio were recognized for their heroism. One led the pupil evacuation while the other aided lost the Hydra alongside Gloria. Gratitude trailed. Sagaro genuinely appreciated them both for their bravery. Because of their work, not one lone existence had been lost in the event. Sagaro moved the talk towards the investigation. A promised lead had surfaced regarding the mastermind beyond the latest assault, a identity, Ultimatter. She clarified further. Ultimatter was hardly just an identity, but the title of a growing criminal organization that had become increasingly dangerous in latest decades. One of their leaders, recognized by witnesses as the male in the iron disguise, had previously clashed with Mafeana. Regardless of their growing aura, the organization stayed shrouded in mystery. The small information assembled so far was fragmented and scarce, keeping their motives unclear. What they did know was chilling. Ultimatter was led by a person recognized as mom worshipped by followers. Goldorn stayed resolute. The school would not allow those responsible for attacking pupils to exit justice. Sagaro disclosed the reality beyond Mafeana's comeback. Her appointment as teacher was solely a cover. She had been summoned to investigate the event covertly. As Mafeana had intended to teach seriously, Sagaro noticed through her instruction flaws aside. Sagaro questioned them to keep her hidden task confidential. Skepticism arose. If the task was so vital, why leave it in their palms? Sagaro replied simply she didn't want to create unnecessary alarm by serving openly. Eventually, Sagaro grinned with subtle assurance. She entrusted the task to them not out of convenience. As they left the meeting chamber, Goldorn appeared forward. He told Demonio that he'd be relying on his aid moving forward, believing him despite all things that had altered. Demonio considered on the differences between the title and truth. He not once anticipated Goldorn, the title's protagonist, to approach him with regard instead than contempt. With resolved gaze, Goldorn extended his palm. He vowed to become firmer and catch up to Demonio, striving to reach fresh heights as a pupil of the school. This instant existed within the game as well, but only as a turning point after Demonio's fall from poise. Currently imagining how things could have vanished, Demonio pictured a darker version of Goldorn, one with a warped obsession. Demonio's aged habits resurfaced. As if controlled by reflex, he spat out the same harsh boundary from the title, rejecting Goldorn with severe arrogance. The bitterness was palpable. Instant regret trailed. Deathpena scolded him mentally. While Goldorn stayed quiet, regardless of the slur, Goldorn stayed calm, inspired instead than discouraged. He quietly pledged to push himself harder rear in the office. Sagaro sighed over the complications piling up. Between internal plots and external threats, the burden on the school carried on to mount. Gloria and Mafeana shared steady remarks. While foreign foes posed peril, They recalled every other that threats from within among mighty nobles must not be ignored either. At Noblessa School, numerous pupils arrived from prestigious bloodlines. Because of that, their parents were often mighty, eccentric people whose influence extended far beyond the school walls. Sagaro lightly mentioned one similar protector who had already formed a complicated appeal. Far across the continent, in a silent elven settlement, a person remained patiently. Encircled by woods and quiet, her presence hinted at further involvement in the affairs of the school. Lady Tierra remained among her folk, speaking gently. The village's door to the capital hadn't been employed in ages, but it would be restored shortly. Urgency had came back. Her real aim was obvious. Formally, the door reopened. She intended to travel to the school. In a serene woods clearing, Lady Tierra rested gracefully, encircled by birds. Her composed aura disguised a further, unspoken determination. Gaze shadowed, she silently muttered one lone word marking the beginning of her concealed intentions. In the capital, a tall and graceful elven lady shifted swiftly through the streets. Her graceful person shifted heads as she hurried with purpose, trailed carefully by a concerned young male somewhere else. Demonio remained confidently, armed and clad in a high-grade mana arts coat. After a lengthy moment aside, Demonio finally came back a state. He rested across from a smiling lady, her aura calming and kind between sips. She voiced how lengthy it had been since their final rested conversation. These gates, uncommon teleportation devices, were normally restricted. Yet, as the Academy's top pupil, Demonio earned the privilege one he planned to use to remain near to the one who counted most. She commended Demonio's successes with a soft grin, naming him brilliant and popular. Despite the compliments, her voice brought a clue of worry, touched by how much effort he was giving within the Academy. Though proud of his progress, she confessed worry that he might come back a state with a girlfriend. Contrary to her expectations, he carried a state, not a sweetheart, but two mature ladies. The two ladies clarified themselves genuinely. Both were his teachers, dedicated to their part as laughter packed the garden. She boldly announced her affection for Demonio, encircled by kindness. He sat silently, strongly adored by every lady present. Demonio rested calm, but the strain around him was undeniable. Regardless of the composed exterior, the atmosphere formed even Penna uneasy. He referred to them boldly as mom allies, leaving behind Penna more puzzled than ever. Though uncertain what he intended, Demonio appeared material-aware. Everyone got along. Afterward that evening, the team enjoyed a lively meal jointly. Laughter rang through the house. Elsewhere, the older ladies shared a relaxing washroom, exchanging silent smiles in the comfort of every other's presence. While Demonio lay in his chamber, somebody silently approached the entry. Her paces were gentle, yet packed with pause. Manana's, mixed and embarrassed, remained beyond. Her spirit raced as she argued her intentions. She paused before Demonio's entry, her palm trembling on the knob. She murmured to herself that this moment would be the final, as if attempting to convince her spirit. Just as she shifted it, a different palm grabbed hers. Gloria seemed just as surprised. Their exchange intensified as each criticized the other's intentions. Gloria recalled Manana that her kid wasn't even a state, suggesting she come back instantly. Rosa, wearing a still bolder outfit, interrupted the debate. She steadily informed them that Demonio had previously departed the chamber, exposing their work as pointless. Beyond, in the courtyard beneath the moonlight, Gloria faced Rosa. Distrust remained in her voice as she asked Rosa's look and what she was doing dressed like that. Under the moonlit heavens, Demonio remained steadily atop a tree, his coat billowing with strength beneath. A disguised intruder crept through the garden. Thanks to an arcane barrier he had placed around the estate, no movement moved undetected. With a plain order, Demonio charged an Earthland's incantation toward the foe. The masked male alarmed, naming his name in stunned disbelief and scrambling to cast a defensive spell. Yet Demonio was vanished from sight. In the blink of an eye, he vanished, leaving behind the attacker puzzled and shaken. Before the intruder could respond, a chilly weapon leaned against his neck. Demonio seemed beyond. Demonio swiftly resolved the intruder was little more than a low-ranked lackey. He recalled how, even in the game originally world, there had been gossip about his darkness potential. Plainly, somebody had been observing him since the Hydra incident, tracking his deeds with disturbing accuracy. With narrowed gaze, Demonio ended that this scout was aspect of an early probing attempt before a bigger assault. Despite the strain, the man began to tremble. Demonio harshly declared he had no interest in negotiating with bandits until something drew his attention. The instant he learned the identity Rosa, Demonio's look warped. Hatred swelled as he named her a parasite. Wearing a terrifying arcane disguise, Demonio offered the intruder one last order: accept Rosa and disappear. The bandit scrambled aside in dread as Demonio chuckled menacingly. From the darkness, Penna watched the moment unfold. She shortly understood Demonio's deeds were calculated, a tactic to mislead any observers into thinking he hated Rosa. He was manipulating perceptions for her security. The burden of his own remarks eventually seized up with him. Tearfully, he collapsed to the floor, overcome with remorse for insulting somebody he vowed to defend. Afterward that evening, Demonio rested in bed exhausted, observing over him silently. The ladies agreed to allow him rest thankful. As Demonio slept peacefully, a huge portrait of Rosa and his younger self towered on the wall. Observing his sleeping features, the young woman stopped. Her stare eased as she neared. Demonio stayed oblivious, his look rested and unguarded in slumber. A little grin appeared on her lips. She muttered that his sleeping features was the only cute thing about him, suggesting at fondness beneath her chilly manner. Daybreak arrived too shortly rear within the school grounds. Demonio sighed in disappointment. Lost and believed, he shifted a corner only to collide face, first into a woman's torso. Embarrassed, he regretted instantly, oblivious that another unforeseen meeting had just begun. After colliding into her, Demonio lifted her stare and saw a towering elf lady with a gentle face. She swiftly checked him over, her palms softly patting his limbs. Seeing he wasn't wounded, she grinned in ease and praised him as a strong boy before leaving. She answered to her companions, naming her Lady Tiara. With a kind grin, she assured them she would join them shortly. Even as one of the men shyly maintained he was turning 50, Tiara lovingly named him a good youth. Observing from afar, Demonio stiffened. A sense of certainty hit him. His heart stirred with realization, and within his thoughts, a voice echoed, "It's Mama Tiara, I'm sure of it currently." Tiara Ilan, an elven over 1,000 decades aged and towering history 2 meters, remained beside her daughter. As the settlement elder and mom of a female lead, her aura was immense in every way. Though only a side character within the title, she had earned unforeseen popularity from a niche group of players. Amid them, Demonio was the majority dedicated admirer. Seeing her arrive within the school activated Demonio's awareness. He understood that some matter significant was beginning, far more than just an informal visit. The long-awaited elven arc was eventually starting, marked by Tiara's graceful but mighty admission. Ray gripped steady, holding up a glowing shield as the huge bird charged. Gentle swelled ahead, colliding with the beast's assault. Concealed in the darkness, a warrior observed the moment unfold. His look strengthened upon seeing the shield's mana arts. Elsewhere, Ray's peers appeared on in surprise. Nobody had anticipated him to wield similar strength. Afterward, at the edge of a shattered cave wall, Ray gazed at his palms in awe. Within the school library, 2 pupils pored over old tomes. They speculated on Ray's unique abilities. Tina's tone shifted solemn as she recalled a legend from her elven settlement. It said of a fighter who formerly employed similar mana arts in an ancient war from afar. Demonio watched the events unfolding just as the tale had once foretold. Tears welled in Tina's gaze as she revealed the abrupt arrival of her mother within the academy. In the headmistress's office, Tina silently confessed her wish to remain within the academy. Determination blended in dread as she questioned her own power to defy her mother's will. 3 formidable people seemed before them, their aura dominating the chamber. Every brought authority and encounter, exuding quiet strain, presented as Tiara Ellen Woods. She was no normal visitor, the ruler of the elven race and mom to Tina. She gripped influence throughout nations. Tiara's overwhelming aura spread through the chamber, leaving even the headmistress visibly disturbed. Her size and aura solitary insisted regard. Without any hesitation, Tiara calmly revealed the true scope of her demand, a leave of absence lasting 100 years. Arguments arose as the school staff asked whether Tina had agreed to similar a drastic choice. The settlement representative stayed steady, insisting the issue had already been chose. Dismissively, Tiara sliced through any resistance. She quieted opposition by asserting dominance, refusing to amuse any debate. Sarcastic comments rang from the side as the other instructor remarked on the absurdity of a century-long leave. The witch steadily watched Tiara's bold proposal, her look unreadable as smoke curled from her lengthy pipe. Seeing her cup down, she suggested a further cause, perhaps some matter tied to the world tree. Talks continued with growing gravity. Legends from the elven village were hardly anymore rejected as myth. What formerly sounded like fantasy currently suggested at troubling truths rooted in history. Disturbing accounts supported the idea. Vicious beasts had started attacking in greater numbers throughout the western lands. Tiara's manner moved for an instant, proud of Sagaro's insight. She commended her research with kind approval. Tiara narrowed her gaze, unmoved by Sagaro's interest. She rejected it as childish interference and groaned. Up matters, the settlement envoy held steady beside Tiara, declaring their intention to have Tina fulfill her inherited part. Reassurances trailed. The ceremony, formerly performed centuries ago by Tiara herself, required solely a century of slumber. To the elven folk, This was merely a temporary measure to maintain stability with the world tree. With their choice last, Tiara and her escort departed the chamber. Their footsteps rang through the corridor, leaving behind beyond uncertainty and silent strain. Somewhere else, Demonio surfaced, watching the incidents from afar. He observed how carefully all things aligned with the predetermined storyline. Demonio stiffened as Tiara abruptly seemed before him. Realization dawned, too delayed she had previously observed. Recollections of the primary tale came back. He remembered her power concealed beyond poise and subtlety. Faced with the accusation, Demonio stayed quiet. Tiara's tone shifted chilly as she announced her verdict. There was no exit. All of abrupt, she activated her mana arts. His form regressed immediately, transformed into that of a helpless infant. Tiara announced him hers currently well aside from the school. A carriage rolled through the royal capital. Within, somebody gently recognized the infant's identity. Demonio. A fresh chapter had started. Tiara grinned kindly and presented herself as Mama Tiara. She accepted her new role without any hesitation. Within the carriage, an elven muttered about Tiara's odd habit. Although entertained, he pitied the transformed youth. Without resisting, Demonio, now an infant, cheerfully answered to her identity. The others could only watch in astonished astonishment. Uncertainty circulated amid the onlookers. One elven asked how swiftly a human could adapt to similar humiliation. Tiara, on the other palm, discovered his fresh form absolutely adorable. Throughout the day, she fed him cautiously and shoved his swing like a doting mom. The royal capital weakened into the past as the odd, fresh connection between them strengthened. Tiara softly rocked the infant in her limbs. Her lullaby calmed Demonio into serene slumber. Instants afterward, he rested on a bench, overcome by bliss. A close-by soul remarked with mild sarcasm. Sharon watched from beyond. He cautioned Tiara about her behavior, voicing worry about the school meeting. Her deeds, he sensed, had vanished too far. Tiara rejected his caution, wearing a grin. To her, people missed the burden of result. She didn't share his gravity. Looking at the heavens, Tiara carried on her mind. Within her gaze, people were fleeting, rash, and not worth confronting straight. Conflict, she thought, solely drained power. Delayed at evening, Demonio wandered into Tiara's luxurious suite, raised by the comfort of familiarity. Within, Tiara welcomed him kindly. She mentioned her exhaustion and playfully questioned for a bit of aid to ease her strain. Responding to her appeal, Demonio tried his best regardless of the obvious difference in size and scale. Tiara, entertained, commended his work. As his enthusiasm rose, Tiara softly intervened. She recalled him, with a teasing voice, of certain boundaries he should observe. Afterward, she voiced gratitude, patting his leader fondly. She laughed, naming him a curious and amusing small one. Tiara asked Demonio's approach, suggesting at further suspicions. Her look sharpened, contrasting her earlier teasing manner. The conversation moved when another pupil carried up Tina. Tiara's voice eased slightly as she recognized their connection. Waiting features to face, Tiara posed a silent query whether she had failed as a mom. For an instant, her assured aura wavered. Afterward, Demonio came back to the school. The once casual atmosphere between him and Tiara weakened, substituted by range and courtesy. The next daybreak, word circulated swiftly. Tina had been carried aside by her mom following the village's choice. 100-year departure had started. Word of Tina's departure disturbed her allies. The truth of 100-year departure sank in swiftly. One classmate declined to receive it. His tone rose with resolve, unwilling to allow her go so readily. The team swiftly decided to move. Their destination grew obvious, the elven settlement, whereas Tina was being gripped by tradition. Talk shifted to Tiara amid the team. Frustration built toward the lady who overruled her daughter's will. Beyond the elven settlement, resentment strengthened. To them, Tiara was hardly anymore just an overbearing person. She was now a symbol of rigid authority, prioritizing custom over compassion. A silent instant went by as Monica lowered her gaze, troubled by what she was unable to fully understand. Beyond shut doors, Tiara placed a palm on her daughter's leader. Her motives, shortly disclosed, were rooted in a further selfless affection. The world tree towered tall, a sacred pillar that governed the land's mana arts and vitality. Well, aside from the tree, turmoil burst in a human village near the elven borders. An enormous bird-like beast tore through the streets, sending stone and timber soaring while frightened villagers scrambled for shelter. Amid the alarm, a mom shielded her child from the creature's blow. Gasping through agony, she urged her child to flee. Dread clouded his gaze as he paused, seized between obedience and dread for his mother's existence. Resolve surged within the youth. His little form remained defiantly between the beast and the fallen lady. In a distant corner of the world, the enormous world tree radiated strength and existence across the score. It nurtured all things with mana arts, but its wrath could ruin as readily as it offered. Well aside from the tree, a serene village on the western continent was abruptly torn apart by chaos. A huge bird swooped through the streets, sending villagers racing in alarm. As the creature assaulted, a mom shielded her kid with her own form. Rubble rushed as they dropped to the floor, agony flashing across her face. Fighting to rise, she urged her child to exit, dread within his stare. The boy froze as the creature approached. Fueled by desperation, the youth shifted forward. A cry of resistance fled his lips. He stood between his fallen mother and the beast, ready to defend her regardless of cost. Villagers assembled in gratitude, hailing the black-haired aristocrat as their savior. Profound and believed, he considered on the realm's instability. The fierce creature rampages weren't random, they stemmed from the unsteady world tree. Lengthy ago, Mama Tira had acted as that giving. Currently, the burden dropped to her girl, Tina, selected to recur the grim legacy. The school suspected oddities near the elven settlement but couldn't move straight. That territory, while within the kingdom, functioned under distinct power, creating complications. Any intervention required stern justification. Because of that, official investigations lagged beyond. The elven settlement, practically sovereign in practice, stayed untouched while moments slipped dangerously ahead. Tina, though only a first-year pupil, had been handed over without resisting to avoid sparking diplomatic conflict. Resolved to intervene, companions Rei and Rebecca had previously arrived at the elven territory. Their task, rescue Tina prior to it, was too delayed. While the others centered on Tina, the black-haired aristocrat had a distinct priority. He departed the girl's destiny to his comrades, choosing his own route. His aim rested further in the woods. There, somebody crucial expected. He wouldn't allow the tale play out like before, not when somebody he cared about was at danger. The initial tale insisted offering. Still, it wasn't the girl, but her mom who now confronted the ceremony. Demonio initiated a check, and with Gloria, Mama but unintentionally seized her mid-change, leading to an uneasy instant that left both parties surprised. Embarrassed by the accidental intrusion, he swiftly regretted. After regaining composure, Gloria confirmed that the nearby creature danger had previously been handled. Reflecting on latest incidents, she voiced regret for entrusting Tina's situation only to the pupils. Yet, her worry was evident. Demonio reassured her with comprehension. He identified the deep concern Gloria held for her pupils, giving her both regard and support as the conversation ended on a warmer note. Though Ria's team had arrived at Rest Settlement a daytime earlier, no updates had arrived since. As Demonio and his partner discussed their separate travel, she asked why they hadn't joined the others. He provided no complete reply, only suggesting at personal reasons. In the game originally scenario, the protagonist party was welcomed kindly at Rest Village. Demonio recognized that avoiding certain folk also factored into his decision. Raiti and her team noticed as Tina's peers were provided food and hospitality in an apparently generous banquet. All appeared well on the top still. The celebration was a ruse. The food had been drugged and the team was captured. Raiti observed his restraints were distinct. One vine had been discreetly sliced, and the jail key somehow finished up in his pocket, suggesting at Tina's quiet intervention. The circumstance mirrored a compelled RPG incident. The protagonist was separated from allies, unequipped, and had to stealthily exit foe surveillance. Demonio, watching from afar, concluded that tagging along with the primary party would have intended getting dragged into written turmoil. While the others stayed entangled in the settlement trap, he used the inattention to action undetected through the woods toward his target. Suddenly, he encountered Ria just beyond the woods. Both were startled, especially since Demonio wasn't scheduled to arrive until afterward. Ria attempted to explain his chaotic exit. Following being captured, he somehow finished up as the solely one who got free. Yet his stealth fell short. The Sentinels had spotted him mid-escape, entirely ruining the planned stream of the script. Demonio was astonished. A fell-short mini-game intended difficulty. That gentle of failure could trigger a chain of hard incidents, and he knew precisely how grim it could get. Difficulty reached immediately. A sharp-eyed elven descended upon them, her aura immense. Their cover had been blown, and currently the circumstance intensified quick. The elven identified them instantly. Assuming they arrived to rescue their captured companions, she readied for confrontation. Demonio, embarrassed, swiftly denied being aspect of the team, hoping to avoid more complications. Reassisted clarity regarding the ceremony. The elven sentinel harshly commanded them to surrender, stating they'd be freed afterward. Upon realizing Tina was the planned offering to the world tree, Rei's determination ignited. He vowed to stop the ceremony regardless of cost. Hovering over the tangled vines, the elven cautioned him not to interfere with traditions he didn't understand. The atmosphere rose tense, confronted with escalating peril and unknown terrain. Rady steeled himself. Time was racing out, and hesitation was hardly any more an option. Raising his tone, he named upon Demonio to battle alongside him. With resolve within his gaze, Rady stood ready to challenge fate itself. A silent riverbank concealed a sacred pool, whereas a solemn maiden stepped into the composed waters. Following the old rite, she started the ceremony cleansing, submerging herself in the spring's chilly embrace. The elder, with gentle features and a soft grin, remembered her own history. Centuries previously, she had trailed the same route. She reassured the youthful young woman that every ceremony required concern and patience. Though the process was lengthy, she vowed to remain alongside her until the end. Kindly in her tone, the woman leaned nearer and asked a simple question. She felt hesitation, uncertain if the girl sensed dread or awe for what expected. Despite worry in her tone, the girl held steady. She maintained on continuing, entirely conscious of the burden. If she hesitated, numerous lives would feature disaster. A ripple went by through the spring's top. Silently, she begged for comprehension. Her tone eased by resolve. She recalled the elder of those still relying on her, especially the people within the school. Urgency shook beneath her composed look. The lady softly recognized her worries. With unwavering assurance, she assured the young woman that all things would be handled. She vowed to carry the burden herself if needed. Well aside from the sacred pool, an intense presence erupted. A different lady, pushed by fury, invoked nature's wrath. Her order swelled through the woods like a storm, targeting unseen foes who had passed a line. Enormous vines burst from the floor as the woods responded to the name. Two people observed in awe as twisting branches encircled a lone fighter. One of the boys watched the fight carefully. Realization hit. Elra's warriors didn't just battle in the woods, they commanded it. Old vines acted as both shield and armament. The woods itself defended the elven folk. Amid the turmoil, one pupil alarmed. His armament was vanished, yet gripped by the elven folk. Without any hesitation, Demonio rushed in. He tossed a spare weapon towards the unarmed pupil. Thankful and relieved, the youth seized it mid-motion. Regaining a battling chance thanks to Demonio's swift support, Demonio offered his blade without any hesitation, then smiled and told his ally not to worry about returning it. Their battle had solely started. Rear to rear, the two warriors held steady. Blades flashed in unison, cutting through surge after surge of thick, living vines. Their rival accepted notice. Identifying their skill, he grinned and lifted his palm. The floor shook as some matter fresh accepted shape. Emerging from the forest memory, illusionary people began to form. Female bodies materialized, graceful and unmistakable. The summoner's warped intent was obvious. Taunting his response, the foe clarified. These weren't actual ladies, but recollections of their comrades, currently entirely exposed, encircled by illusionary people of his comrades. The youth fought. Although conscious they were fake, slashing them sensed wrong. Somewhere else, Demonio confronted the same trick. Imitation ladies encircled him, moving with seductive accuracy. Ridicule trailed. The foe labeled all men as frail to temptation, flashing distorted recollections of Demonio's history, implying indulgence and carelessness. Assurance radiated from his each word. Yet Demonio didn't pause with one clean sweep. He scattered the false images. Surprise rippled through the rival. That level of determination wasn't anticipated. Even the youth gazed, astonished, not just by the result, but by the unshakable clarity in Demonio's every movement. Observers observed in awe as Demonio's swordsmanship flowed with no fury or malice. Composed and unreadable, his look betrayed no strain. In that instant, he grew the embodiment of swordsmanship, entirely attuned to the fight. The youth clutched his torso, overcome. Seeing Demonio in action rose some matter profound within him. As the illusory forces weakened and silent came back, Demonio staggered. The battle's strangeness eventually seized up to him, leaving behind a touch of nausea. His companion laughed, observing even he had limits. Fury warped across his features. He insisted answers why somebody with similar power had pretended to be meek, recalling previously encounters. He understood he'd been misled from the beginning. Accusations rushed as the beaten foe pieced things jointly. Demonio's unease had been in move, a ploy to drop their sentinel. Demonio simply grinned, feigning innocence. As one aspect of him played dumb, the other marveled at the uncertainty. Urgency came back. The team regrouped, preparing to lead a rear to the settlement. Though the foe was bound, his warning rang out. Stopping the ceremony would bring consequences. Gaze narrowed, the bound elven cautioned of the world tree's instability. With no elven priestess, the whole continent confronted ruin. Moment was racing less. His last remarks rang through the woods. The fierce shifts in close-by creatures were only the beginning. Cautions intensified without a proper giving. The world tree's disruption would spark continent-wide disaster, energy loss, creatures rampaging, and famine. For millennia, elven folk had upheld calm by giving maidens to the tree. This tradition, the prisoner seized, was hardly harshness but protection against catastrophe. He lifted his tone, declaring that humanity's calm had constantly depended on the elven folk. Yet circumstances had moved. The youth asked the cost, would they truly offering Tina for the realm's security? The woods, formerly sacred, currently posed an impossible dilemma. Demonio answered solemnly. The world tree state had deteriorated quickly, far forward of the normal cycle. Tina would not perish, he maintained. Though elven folk seized Tina would only rest for a century, the youth gripped his fists. To people that intended saying goodbye forever, he remembered her dreams. Tina wished to stay within the academy. That wish solitary was cause enough to battle. He yelled his resolve, sacrificing one innocent existence. Even to rescue numerous couldn't be the only reply yet. Demonio and the others understood he had no scheme at all. The team stopped. Demonio threw one elven to free the captives while he stayed beyond. Smiling darkly, Demonio towered over the bound elven. As others argued ideals, he selected action. He'd extract every hidden the elven understood, starting currently. Demonio approached wearing a smirk, his voice sharp. He asked the others to step aside if they missed determination. With assurance, he faced the bound elven. She bristled in honor, stating her strength as a fighter. Torture wouldn't labor, she maintained. With composed intensity, Demonio named her by identity Sharon. Her form tensed. He wasn't threatening. Rather, he released her binds, leaving behind her surprised and puzzled. Demonio disclosed her hidden Tiara Mama the Elder, intended to accept her daughter's spot in the ritual. Sharon's composure cracked. Surprise circulated across her features. That concealed reality was recognized only to a few. Tiara's power had all been in move. Her plan was never to send her daughter, she planned to take her spot, just like in the initial tale where the mother was the one locked aside. Her return to the school wasn't just to retrieve Tina, but to confirm some matter more crucial, whether her daughter had appeared real friendships, pushed by love and duty. Tiara ready to offering herself to defend both the continent and her child's tomorrow. As the team argued, responses split. One wept out against sacrificing Tina. Yet when it arrived to Tiara, his voice eased. As turmoil unfolded, Demonio hexed the protagonist's inconsistency. Solely the mom evoked his comprehension. Demonio formed a vow. No issue the scale of opposition. He'd use each resource to defend Tiara Mama. Jointly they reviewed the realm's abrupt shift. The World Tree state had keenly declined, unnatural and alarming. Somewhere else, a distinct team reveled in turmoil. Two men absorbed the World Tree's mana arts, praising its potency. A third person, cloaked and calm, recalled them not to stray from their task yet. Indulgence was tough to resist. Smiling, they justified it all. No issue the destruction, the lives lost, or the selfishness. They thought Mama would forgive all things. To them, ruin was divine permission. Demonio dashed through the woods at full pace, a determined glint within his gaze. His owl partner maintained pace alongside him, guiding the way. He reached at the elven village's admission and spotted his companion waiting. Following a swift exchange, they regrouped, preparing for the next action. Within, they discovered crates packed with recovered arms and stolen supplies. Faith came back, restoring their gear, intended they could rejoin the battle and push ahead. As one of them knelt to inspect the loot, the noise of heels clicking on the floor sliced through the atmosphere. A voluptuous lady seemed elegantly holding a glass of drink. Her carefree attitude contrasted keenly with the strain. Tina's mom disclosed the ceremony was previously underway, dismissing any attempt to intervene. Regardless of pleas, she stayed unmoved. With a taunting voice, she knelt down playfully, brushing off the group's gravity as childish whining. Maintaining her exaggerated maternal persona, she provided to aid by lulling them into surrender with infant talk and false warmth. All of a abrupt, Demonio transformed into a baby-like condition, leaving everyone astonished. His ally was carried by shock by the absurd sight. Realizing Demonio might have a strategy and thoughts, the other youth swiftly trailed suit, mimicking the transformation in hopes of keeping up. Demonio charged himself dramatically, slamming headfirst into his ally, snapping the strain with a perfectly timed blow. In his infant disguise, he burst into a loud gibberish, insulting the lady while taunting his ally's half-hearted serving. Taking the cue, the blonde youth raced from the chamber. Demonio's scheme labored, he had created the inattention needed. Departed beyond, Demonio stayed in the woman's grasp, receiving his part. She, oblivious of the ploy, held on to her fantasy. Within himself, she battled her own fears. Taking on the burden solitary, she disguised it under compelled assurance. Demonio abruptly bit down, drawing the lady off sentinel. His piercing stare disclosed he was done playing along. With intense determination, he announced his independence. Not any more willing to pretend, he refused false comfort and command. He lectured her on the meaning of real motherhood. A mother's power, not fondness, was what shifted him. Instants afterward, Demonio came back to normal form in his limbs. He gripped the real target, Tina, safely retrieved. Cradling the young woman softly, he soothed her alarm. Calm reassurance substituted turmoil as he murmured comforting remarks to ease her dread. Holding the transformed young woman in his limbs, Demonio steadily shared his sight. To him, even powerful ladies like moms deserved instants of vulnerability. From the stairs, his ally neared, reporting that the school pupils were trying all things to rescue the girl. He remembered the woman's earlier deeds, cleansing herself in the sacred pool and drinking the ceremonial drink, fulfilling every shrine maiden's part. Realization calmed in. Her preparations weren't for tradition's sake. She planned to replace her girl in the ceremony all along. Sitting silently, Demonio heard as she admitted her determination. If her existence could secure calm, she would not pause. The young woman shook in Demonio's limbs, feelings bubbling to the top. Regret, dread, and confusion took hold all jointly. Steadily, Demonio told her the reality as an infant. There was no chamber for honor or obligation, only vulnerability. The sealing ceremony posed immense danger for somebody under 100 decades aged. Life was unlikely. The cost was nearly always demise. Yet, the lady had previously received that destiny. She was ready to offering all things to rescue her girl. Currently facing mortality herself, the young woman wept out. Following living for centuries, she was yet afraid to perish. Demonio considered on his uncertainties. He formally pondered if Tiara truly sought demise, questioning whether rescuing her was selfishness. That uncertainty had weakened. With unwavering resolve, he vowed to defend her. No issue the cost. Prior to he could move further, sentinels stormed in. Their abrupt looks sliced the instant less. Without any hesitation, Demonio sprinted through the exit, escaping with the girl in his arms as Tiara watched in shock. The sentinels hurried to her side, worried for her security. She stayed seated, silently observing him vanish from sight. Regardless of the turmoil, Tiara answered with a faint grin. Although shaken, she maintained she was unharmed. With a blush and unsure look, she murmured a denial. Whatever had just happened, she maintained it to herself. Somewhere else, the arc arrived at its peak. Certain sought to carry out the ceremony, while others shifted to stop it entirely. Distinct forces acted in hidden. Tiara attempted to offering herself in quiet, while others maneuvered beyond the scenes. And then there was Demonio, the one who defied the title's scenario. His deeds forged a fresh route entirely. At Noblesse Mana Art School, a communication was received. The circumstance had grown too dire to overlook. Accounts cited the instability of the world tree and a feasible danger from the half-born cult. Reinforcements were approved. The elven leader voiced bound gratitude. Regardless of the strain, he appreciated Lady Sharon for her timely support. Although receiving aid sensed humiliating, he recognized it was necessary. Honor had to yield to life. Flashback disclosed the previously debate, while Demonio encouraged requesting aid. The elven initially declined, unwilling to rely on people. Demonio lowered his leader in desperation, pleading sincerely. He had no honor, departed only the will to defend. When asked, he didn't pause. There was no need for a cause to rescue a kind-hearted mom. Seeing Demonio's honesty, the elven leader eventually understood. His own honor paled in comparison to similar resolve rear within the school. Headmistress Sharon smiled. Demonio's deeds departed an impression he was no normal pupil. As her assistant reached with a book on nonviolent instruction, the instant was broken by routine. But Sharon's stare remained on the identity. Demonio traitor. Mafeana looked up from her chair, unmoved. Regardless of the manual, her instinct leaned towards stern hands and training. To restore stability, the elven priestess was selected to be locked within the world tree. This ancient ceremony went by down through generations, was thought to calm the mighty forces dwelling within. As the sacred ceremony progressed under moonlight, the priestess stepped forward gracefully. From beyond the woods, a person observed quietly. Demono, a heretic who opposed the ceremony, remained in hiding. Prior to Demono could move, Ray and his companions reached in haste. Arms raised and faces resolved, they named for an immediate halt, unwilling to allow the sealing continue unchallenged. Surprised, the priestess shifted to the abrupt intrusion. Ray remained before her, unsure of what would arrive next. Tears welled up as the elven young woman eventually voiced her reality. She not anymore hoped to trail the ceremony. Quiet trailed her outburst. The tall priestess neared silently, then removed the ceremonial crown with a soft grin. From the assembled crowd, murmurs circulated. Tiara, the tall priestess, and the girl's mother shifted forward. Before anybody could stop her, Tiara selected to accept her daughter's spot. Sentinels intervened as the girl arrived out, naming to her mom, but Tiara's will was last. With composed determination, Tiara ascended toward her destiny. She entrusted the tomorrow of the elves to her girl, believing in her power and kindness to carry it ahead. The young woman shifted to Ray, her tone trembling as she placed her palm on his. Waiting apart, Tiara observed the moment with a faint grin. Recollections rose as she remembered her own youth, a moment packed with similar dreams. Centuries previously, she had sensed the same kindness. 800 years ago, she truly thought in calm between elves and people, her spirit ajar and full of hope. Affection had formerly blossomed between her and a wandering traveler. The connection they shared was profound, but moment had eroded even his features from her recollection. That affection, pure and unshaken, was ruined by the very customs she currently upheld. Tira ascended the last paces solitary. As the shrine maiden, it was her obligation to rest within the world tree for a century to preserve calm across the continent. Rei's tone broke through the atmosphere, packed with feeling. He vowed to wait for her, even if he aged and withered, promising eternal affection without state. Tears welled up in Tira's gaze. Though she questioned the tomorrow, his remarks carried comfort for an instant. She allowed herself to believe in miracles again. Vines of the world tree covered about her as the ceiling started. Regardless of the legend, sleeping was not once literal. Trapped in gloom, stripped of movement or noise, she stayed conscious. Her soul bound to the world tree, constantly drained, yet her mind withstood unchanging and solitary in the void. Within the crushing quiet of her jail, only one believed offered her power the chance to see him again. Decades slipped by unnoticed, yet her spirit held on to the belief that he would arrive. 100 decades afterward, that quiet prayer stayed the only thing keeping her soul from breaking. Yet when she eventually awakened, truth welcomed her with quiet. The wonder she had longed for not once arrived. He had perished of age, they told her. 15 decades had went by since his silent following. Prior to her remained a fresh generation. His kids and grandchildren currently brought his legacy. Solely a year following her sealing, he had married somebody else. Jointly, they built an existence, lifted kids, and found joy in a world she sacrificed herself to defend. Not formally did he speak her identity again. Even on his deathbed, he went by encircled by household, his lips quiet of the one who had remained a century for him. Her spirit stiffened. As she withstood agony beneath the world tree, he had lived in calm with another. From that instant on, the world lost its color. She numbed herself with drink, bitterly reflecting on her own fate. Believing a human had been her greatest error. Still resenting his choices, sense foolish aspect of her, yet hoped he'd remain further just 10 years. Once resentment took hold, she was incapable to anymore see any good in him. She compelled a grin while cradling her kid, giving pardon to the innocent. Around her, human voices rejected the history, naming it irrelevant. Eventually, she offered up on people altogether. They appeared no distinct from kids, selfish, forgetful, swift to abandon what once counted. Her existence drifted into routine. Obligation grew her solely compass. Raising children was hardly anymore personal, it was obligation, brought out as the clan's leader. Regardless of all things, a piece of her spirit stayed kind. Holding her infant in her limbs, she found one reality untouched by treachery. Her love for her kid endured through it all. Tierra appeared aside from the people. The burden of treachery had departed her, incapable to features them again. What was lost to her tomorrow with affection and calm could yet belong to her kid. Even if short, Tierra hoped Tina to have a youth encircled by kindness and shared recollections. Every step Tina took toward coexisting with people grew more than just a route ahead. It was a chance to rebuild what had once been ruined. Though her palms shook, Tierra told herself it was only momentary frailty. As the ceremony started, her determination gripped steady. Not formally did uncertainty go in her spirit. As the sealing ceremony advanced, an unknown power covered around Tierra's form. And foreboding aura swelled through the atmosphere. This wasn't the soft mana arts of the world tree, this was darker. Corrupted. She instantly felt some matter had vanished horribly wrong. From the darkness, a disguised person emerged, laughing maniacally. He boasted regarding orchestrating each action. He had tampered with the world tree, exploiting the elves' shut traditions. Predictably, they had alarmed and hurried the ceremony just as he intended. Though startled that Tierra had carried her daughter's spot, the intruder received it without concern. Tierra fought as corrupted vines warped around her, tightening mercilessly. Taunting her offering, the intruder ridiculed her resolve and mocked the affection she had shown for her girl. With satisfaction, the foe announced his scheme finished. Her suffering was encountered with contempt. The male rejected all her agony, stating every move of selflessness had been wasted from the start. A sneering grin circulated across his features. He thanked her sarcastically, naming her devotion useless, a meaningless gesture in a scheme that had previously shifted past her. But before he could celebrate further, an abrupt fist hit his features with immense power. Tierra's gaze widened as a person she believed lengthy gone erupted into action. The man's abrupt arrival stunned her, breaking the strain in an instant. With a mighty blow, he charged the foe across the battlefield. The overwhelming power disrupted the ceremony and stopped the stream of corrupted mana arts. Waiting firm, he disclosed this had always been his instinct to intervene when the hidden enemy was forced to move straight. In the initial timeline, Tiara's destiny finished here. Her mana arts drained, her form departed to wither aside, yet history was currently rewritten. Looking up in stunned disbelief, Tiara identified the one who had altered all things. The foe, currently wounded and puzzled, insisted answers. From afar, Tiara and her allies stood ready, aware that the crisis was well away from over regardless of the enemy's interference. The corrupted world tree stayed unsteady. Tiara's fate still towered, sparking worries that the ritual might fall rear upon her daughter rather. Demino shifted ahead with resolve. He declined to allow any result that defied Tiara's wishes and assured the others that a better scheme was previously in motion. He pledged to defend both mom and girl for him, honoring her intended, preserving all things she gripped dear, not just surviving but fulfilling her real hopes. As the ceremony started, a odd gentle enveloped the area, halting everyone in uncertainty. Troops stepped rear, uncertain if the summoning had completed, while strain hung heavily in the atmosphere. All of abrupt, two unfamiliar men seemed before the altar. One of them, Demonio, remained steadily. The other male, disoriented and wounded from force, gritted his teeth in agony. His abrupt admission had plainly stunned everyone. Charging with fury, the blond male blamed Demonio for ruining his scheme and yelled threats. Blade in palm, Demonio shifted ahead. His gaze blazed with resolve as he announced that Demise Solitary wouldn't atone for such crimes. In the darkness, two people argued over Dorotio's deeds. One asked his disobedience, while another rejected the worry, insisting Dorotio stayed vital to their strategy. As Demonio gripped steady, three sinister individuals emerged. He identified them immediately, sources of every malicious scheme connected to the ceremony and the forest's decay. Reality unraveled. These villains had warped the sacred ceremony by sacrificing an elven shrine maiden, disrupting the world tree's normal magic cycle that had sustained the continent for generations. Dorotio, proud and defiant, lashed out against his disguised companion, rejecting power. Regardless of differences in level, their organization refused any hierarchy. The lady invoked the identity of the primordial mom, declaring that all sins would be forgiven under her will. No issue the cost. Encircled by twisting vines, Demonio confronted Dorotio, who remained atop the growing branches. Their fight intensified swiftly. Branches swelled with mana arts as Dorotio manipulated the woods. Dorotio charged ahead with a wild smirk, striking tough. Demonio was able to parry the strike just in moment, his enchanted weapon flashing in response. One rapid counter sliced throughout Dorotio's stance, forcing him rear. From the edge, the lady panted, gaze wide as the assault connected. Warning him urgently, she pleaded Demonio to keep Dorotio aside from the hexed armament. Dorotio, recognized as Fuyukan, the soul drainer, was far more risky than he seemed. Dorotio grasped the enchanted armament, draining its strength through raw touch. His skill to absorb both existence and mana arts formed him a global danger. With composed menace, he observed the youth retreat. Rubble crumbled under his hexed touch, disintegrating on touch as he taunted his rival. Because of this strength, Dorotio could currently manipulate the world tree's mana arts. Different from the elven folk, he had stolen that natural by power, not birth. Shrugging off the confrontation, Dorotio rejected Demonio as not worth his moment. His companion stayed yet, silently letting him lead without query. As a last action, Dorotio bound the elven lady. Declaring her as his hostage, he cautioned Demonio to remain yet or suffer consequences. Dorotio shifted in surprise. Demonio had vanished without a trace, leaving behind beyond only ripples in the floor. Before he could respond, Demonio reappeared with composed accuracy. His stare chilly, he announced how predictable Dorotio's every action had been. As Dorotio moved his attention to the elven hostage, Demonio hit. A mighty strike landed cleanly, drawing the foe entirely off guard. Blade plunged profound. Demonio murmured a warning, not once slur Tierra Mama again. The power of the blow threw surprise through Dorotio's form. Though the blow appeared deadly, Demonio understood better. Waiting prepared, he observed Dorotio collapse but stayed cautious. The lady asked if it was over, but Demonio replied grimly similar, and rival wouldn't fall so readily. Dorotio's torso shone ominously, radiating power from the world tree. He had absorbed an immense amount of old mana arts. Previously, a mighty user of forbidden incantations, Dorotio currently possessed regeneration and near-limitless power. With the world tree's mana arts amplifying him, according to the initial tale, no one could harm him. He only grew vulnerable when Tierra Mama's mana arts backfired within him. Tierra Mama, yet bound, cautioned there would be no convenient wonder. If they hoped to rescue her, triumph must come through full strength without shortcuts or divine interference. Regardless of injuries, Dorotio stood up in fury. Demonio's companions recalled him not to underestimate the youth. He wasn't just a pupil. With his blade raised and presence flaring, Demonio remained unwavering. His battle instincts were so refined they appeared prophetic. Jumping into action, he broke through the bindings and seized Tiara Mama in mid-air. Despite her injuries, she maintained she was fine, but he gripped her firmly, giving quiet reassurance. Beyond them, Dorodio offered chase, recklessly ignoring his comrades' cautions. His fury boiled over as he pledged not to allow them exit. The two staying cultists shared glances. One observed how swiftly the other had carried Dorodio's side. Smiling, the muscular male gripped his fist. He confessed he owed Dorodio, having received certain of the world tree's mana arts as well. Strength swelled violently through the muscular man's form, with mana arts overflowing from the world tree. He roared in madness and vowed to ruin every final foe. Now drunk on power, he noticed the fight as the perfect opportunity to test his fresh strength. Forward of him stood two fresh challengers, a resolved elf fighter and an uneasy student. Elsewhere, Demonio sprinted through the woods, carrying Tiara Mama to security. She named out his identity, gently clinging to him as he shoved ahead with urgency. Fighting beneath her burden, Demonio reassured her. It wasn't her size, yet the odd gravity affecting his stability. Tiara Mama felt the reality only one of the foes was chasing them. A massive strength assembled beyond. Though worried for her security, Tiara maintained they prioritized the villagers. Demonio offered a composed reply he'd manage it. Acknowledging his inexperience, Demonio hoped he could solve all things solitary. Ultimately, he yet sensed like an ordinary student. Regardless of his modesty, he embraced that title and readied to battle. Releasing Tiara, he shifted rear with complete power. An enormous slab of earth plummeted toward frightened troops. They scrambled in alarm as the battlefield shook beneath the enemy's raw strength. As the enormous boulder descended, Demonio remembered a student's privilege, not strength, but the freedom to ask for aid. Just as the force approached, swirling power burst, a mighty grown-up fighter intervened, hurling through the rubble and slicing through the turmoil. Without any hesitation, the woman landed a crushing kick squarely into the enemy's gut. The brute wept out as his form was charged, his expression packed with astonishment. The power of the blow hurled him into the woods with violent pace. Landing gracefully, the fighter remained poised. Her aura radiated encounter and power, a reminder that even heroes sometimes need somebody firmer to step in. Demonio understood he didn't need to feature all things solitary. Believing others was also power. His mentors remained prepared. The Guardians arrived, prepared to defend and fight beside him without any hesitation.